Here's a message of importance to millions of people who are continually pale and washed out, weak and run down. Doctors will tell you that these conditions are often caused by a deficiency of iron. The iron you need to keep you physically fit and mentally alert. Medical studies show that 2 out of 3 women and many, many men lack the daily iron your body requires in a form your body can easily use and put to work. Every dose gives you more than your daily minimum iron requirement.
We are awake, we are awake, we are not alone. We are striving for more.
So if you're not getting the iron your body needs,
We are awake, we are not alone.
if you feel weak, run down, and are easily upset,
We are striving for more.
start taking iron today.
Happy Friday, my friend.
It's Friday, my dudes.
It is Friday, my dudes. Welcome to Have No Sphere right here on the Iron Realm Media YouTube channel. As you might have guessed it, my name is Josh Corey, and we have got an exciting show for you guys tonight. It's actually one that we said we would do, and look at us actually doing it. Who'd have thunk? So before we jump right into it, let's say hello to the crew that's here every week, starting off with, well, because I haven't done her first in a while, we'll start from this is Cammie Nodell. You might know her from her channel, Aisling717, here on the YouTubes. Cammie, how are you doing, my dear?
Hey, I'm doing great this evening. Voice going in and out, but I'm excited for the show tonight. We've got some great guests, and I can't wait for you to announce them. So, yeah, we did survive the storm here Tuesday in South Carolina, and some fabulous pictures up on my Facebook for the friends of mine in the chat room if y'all want to check it out. It was an exciting storm.
Awesome. So it's always good to sit through a good storm every once in a while.
One of my favorites. We had uprooted trees and all kinds of mayhem, but nobody was hurt, no major damage. So again, it fell into the fun category.
Good. Glad everyone made it out all right. Not to include a fella you got living there not too far from where you are right now, like literally feet. Mr. Zachary Zabala, and he's got a little channel here on YouTube. Good Times for All, spelled Gudtims, the number 4. ALL, the Nomad. Zach, how the hell are you, sir?
Hey, Josh. Kind of bitter. I don't know how to say it. Bittersweet, maybe. Not really bittersweet. Just headache. Think it might have to do with sinuses. I'm kind of feeling stuff in my ears and behind my eyes. So the day kind of sucked, but David, I've been helping beta test this thing. He shared with me today for the FE Friend Finder on the app, and every time a new person joins, it gives your phone a little, and the thing's been popping all day. So every time I hear it, no matter how bad I feel, I get this little grin on my face and this little smile.
All right. So the question is,
it's been a good day.
Approximately, how many times have you heard it? I can't do it.
At least 20 times.
See, I can appreciate that, but I don't know if I want to hear my phone going off 20 times a day. Even if it's just a little, it's still.
Just wait. Just wait till you wait. It's not like an annoying noise like a Skype or something like that.
Or like when I set a new alarm to get up to in the morning. Yeah, well, this is the one that's not annoying. But guess what? After about the 3,000th time I've heard it, waking up to it or it pissing me off, now it's not quite so cute.
Always the cynic, Josh. Always the cynic.
That's me, just a cynical asshole.
I love you.
I would say hello to Mr. Walter Johnson. He finishes off the trio we run on Tuesday and Friday mornings over on Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com sometimes. But we are here on YouTube's, on DLive, on Odyssey, on Rockfin, and of course, Facebook, I think, and Twitter as well. We're on a few different places. Walter, you've got a little channel, Flat Earth Head, here on the YouTubes and other such places. How are you doing, sir?
I am great. It is Friday. It's exciting. We have a new show. I mean, a new guest and some returning guests. I can't wait to get to it. You guys hear me rapping my mouth all week long. So I'm going to say, hey, thank y'all for being here, and I'll shut up. And let's get these guests in here.
Yes.
How are you, Josh?
Well, that's just it. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time with me because the guests were nice enough to let me vent and get my bunny talk out of the way, so I don't have to bore everybody else with my bunny talk because I got to talk bunnies already. So we can jump right in and say hello to our returning guest, Mr. Jerry Marzinsky, who has been just one of the a crowd favorite and definitely a Zachary favorite. It's since the first time Jerry was on. Zach has just been pondering and thinking and just having his brain broken over the information that Jerry brought the first time. And then Jerry brings on his guest Anon, and just hearing Anon's story and just the struggle and the fight and the victory was absolutely inspiring. And that was just a few weeks ago. And then with the process or the promise that Jerry made of him bringing his co-author Sherry Swiney on as just, how can you not take him up on that? I'm going to do some live question and answers. I know Ian in chat has an answer or has a question he's already thrown out there. So I hope everybody in chat get your little brains percolating. We're going to have some questions for Anon and for Jerry and for Sherry. But let's first just say hello to old Jerry Marzinsky. Jerry, welcome back to Have No Fear in the Iron Realm. It's glad to have you. I'm reasonably sure we still have Jerry Marzinsky.
Yeah, we're not hearing you, Jerry.
Jerry, your lips are moving, but we don't hear you.
It doesn't say you're muted here.
Wow, we had everything working great.
Right.
Now the gremlins attack yet again.
Can you hear me now?
There you
There
go.
he is.
He's back.
Beautiful.
Well,
There is no pain. You're received. Oh, you're back.
had to change the plug. I don't know what happened. I mean, the plug suddenly just went dead.
Yeah. Funny
So
how that
it's
stuff
it's good to be here
Funny.
with Anon and Sherry. I mean, the psychiatric mafia does not give a voice to people who hear voices. They just say, oh, these are hallucinations because they say so. But, after studying these things for, 35, 40 years, they run very specific, very repeatable patterns. And something that does that is being guided. I mean, that there's no patterns. They're not random like the psychiatric mafia says. So to be able to talk to people who have had battles, I mean, serious life-threatening battles with these things, I've heard them periodically, and and only after I prayed to hear them because I wanted to experience what they were like. And what surprised me is they sounded just like my own thoughts, like the voice you hear in your head right now, but the intent was very different. And for me, the thing was trying to kill me. It failed, and there was a battle there. But that's the only time that I really have heard them. And what shocked me was they sound just like my normal thoughts. I mean, there's no change in timbre or.
It wasn't like somebody in the room talking to you.
No.
This was like you having those thoughts in your head.
It was in my own head, but it wasn't me.
Wow.
Because it was telling me to do things that would have killed me. It was trying to get me to panic. And if I panicked under the situations I was in at the time, I wouldn't have made it. So it's like, what the hell is this thing? And, but mine was very brief compared to Anon and Sherry's. I mean, they were fighting for their lives. I've worked with psychiatry my entire career, but I've never had to I was never hospitalized. I never had to take their medicines. I just had to put up with their bull crap. So
and you knew better than to go in somewhere and say, "Hey, I'm hearing this voice in my
oh
head."
geez, oh no,
Yeah.
no, I couldn't even tell them I was talking to other patients, the other patients I had on my caseload about their voices, because they would get all upset. I got in trouble twice for doing that. They don't want you even talking to these people about their voices. What they told me is, "Oh, you're reinforcing their voices and you're making them worse." And I'm like, "Oh, come off it." I knew that wasn't true. So I've been investigating these things for 35, 40 years, and they are real, and they are not hallucinations, and they're very destructive, and they run a series of negative patterns. They're anti-religious. They foster negative emotion. They're energetic parasites. So most people who hear them feel completely drained after they're being attacked by them. And they run another series of very strange patterns. They get louder after sunset. They get louder if they're ignored. They foster self-destructive thoughts and behavior. And lots of times they are telling these people, why don't you just kill yourself? I mean, nobody likes you, everybody hates you. They're plotting behind your back. They're, you're worthless, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're ignorant.
Let me interrupt you for half a second there, Jerry. You said something really interesting about them increasing.
Thank you all.
That
was really I was going to bring that back up too.
Dude, and it kind of to me, it ties in a lot with what I've known throughout years and years of having family working in hospitals, dealing with sick relatives, my mother passing with cancer. Pain gets worse at night. If you've ever suffered with a toothache, you're fine all day long, but at night that shit will drive you up the wall. You know what I'm saying? So something about darkness and this increase of like negative energy. I mean, what do you think's the tie-in there? Sorry to derail what you were saying, but that just blew my mind when you said that.
It is strange. I worked in a geriatric center doing psych evaluations there for a while, and they have something called sundowner syndrome.
This is where I was going.
Wow,
my question was
where these older folks in these geriatric places, they start getting really nuts after sunset. And the voices get louder or attack after sunset, with them coming the strongest around 3 a.m.
The witching hours.
Really?
Yeah. And you can't ignore them. I mean, psychiatry, the psychiatric mafia say, "Oh, just ignore them. No, it doesn't work. They get louder if they're ignored.
And when you're subjected, I would think, to that constant and just incessant negativity, it gets to the point you can't just ignore it. And it becomes sort of, I can imagine sort of who you are. It's surrounding yourself and sort of the brainwashing of repetition that pretty soon you can't just ignore it. It's become a part of your everyday living, is having that reinforced inside your brain, all these negative thoughts. You don't just turn it off.
And one of the things that, they do is they try to display themselves as your thoughts. They want you to think that they are you, and if the person who's hearing them can't ferret out the difference, they're gone. They need to understand that there's a difference between who they are and what the voices are. And Sherry and Anon can give you personal information about that. What their battle was like, trying to ferret out who was who and what was what, and who was talking to them, and was it themselves. But since the psychiatric mafia doesn't believe that these things are entities, they go, "Well, your brain is broken and you're psychotic because you have a chemical brain imbalance," and there is none. They made that up.
Yeah,
they totally made it up.
They don't even say what chemical, do they?
They have no idea what it is. It was made up by a drug company. I think it was Eli Lilly. I think it was, when Prozac came out, and they knew it was a lie at the time. And they promoted it anyway because they didn't have anything else. So they go, "Oh yeah, the pills seem to quiet things down. So it must be some kind of chemical brain imbalance." The only reason those antipsychotics work is because they calm the person down. The voices want them upset. You know?
And they
So
definitely
they
mess
just
with the
move on to
body's
somebody else.
chemistry, the brain chemistry, the body chemistry, the mind's ability to like have normal reactions to things. You know, it's amazing how people can just accept this trance-like state because they're on medication and just kind of dull themselves out to life, and that fixes stuff. I never have understood it. Sorry, I'm interrupting again. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's their only solution is to drug you silly, you know, and they don't stay on those drugs because they're so awful. So they go off them and then they become psychotic again. And then it's just this round and round merry-go-round that the psychiatric mafia just greases the wheels. So they go into the psych hospital, they're put on drugs, they are supposedly stabilized or drugged senseless, and then they're released. They can't stand being on the drugs. They go off, they go psychotic again, and they come back in again. So it's every round, it's thousands of dollars.
That almost sounds like it's on purpose as you're coming off these drugs, which they say is dangerous. They even say it in the pamphlet. You can have suicidal tendencies while coming off this if you don't do it how your doctor recommends.
Yeah, you
Oh,
can't
yeah,
go cold turkey. You can't go cold turkey.
Yeah,
on those
it's like
drugs.
the
You gotta
pill
crash
is
these.
Never. You always titrate. Always.
Yeah, don't do
It's almost like
cold
the
turkey.
pill is designed to, once you do this to yourself, then the voices do come in and they have free reign on you because your body is so out of whack and it's not
Absolutely, they do.
calm
I can
anymore.
speak from personal experience. I was taking Serotonin for a while when I was working at the casino trying to deal with the madness of that evil place. And hated it. Hated the way I felt, hated the dull feeling, hated all the ways it made me feel. And when I ran out, I just didn't refill it. And spent that weekend thinking of every horrible thing you can come up with, including, interestingly enough, how alone I was in this universe. This big, infinite void, and I'm here, and all this stuff just kept going through my head. And why not just end it all and go into that void? Yeah, it's horrible shit. The pharmacy industry.
So we do have Anon here, and I want to say hello to Anon because it was such an awesome a show with him last time.
Yep.
But I do want to talk real quick, Jerry, about the specifications, because we're using the term sort of schizophrenia in a broad term. But as I recall from your first appearance, you were dealing specifically with paranoid schizophrenics. Am I correct?
Right, that's the most widespread category, although there's several different categories. You know, they have undifferentiated schizophrenia, and you know, all these diagnoses are completely made up. There's not a single test that will verify any of them. There's no lab work, there's no x-rays, there's no EEG, there's nothing. They don't have any clinical tests to verify any, not even a single one of those diagnoses, not one. They're made up in like a tobacco barn setting where some guy, you know, psychiatrist comes in and he goes, "Hey, I got a new diagnosis. It's da, 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 da. What do you guys think?" You know, "Oh yeah, that's a good one. Oh, let's put it in the DSM."
Right.
You know, and they vote them in and they vote them out, and they have to have that number for insurance. They have to have, you know, paranoid schizophrenia 303.90. You know,
It's a
so
billing
they can put
code.
it down.
That's
It's
right.
a billing
Gotta
code.
bill
Yeah.
that shit.
Yeah. So it's a giant scam. It's a giant freaking scam. Those drugs don't cure anything. They don't cure depression. They don't cure schizophrenia. They don't cure anxiety. They just mess you up. You know, and that some of these anti-anxiety drugs, they're addictive. You know, Wellbutrin is very. You try to get off of that stuff once you start, and it's like trying to get off of heroin. It's worst. You know, so it's almost like they addict you, and then you got to keep taking it because it's too painful to get off it.
Now, I have a question for you. With like Wellbutrin and the different ones, a lot of these they give to different people in situations that have nothing to do with psychiatric conditions, or what they would call psychiatric. So Wellbutrin was also cross-marketed under a different name to stop smoking. And depending on if they gave it to you for psychiatric, your insurance would cover it, or if it was smoking cessation, it would not cover it, and different things on the code. So they renamed the drugs different things, but they were the same drug. The same as like with migraines and that they'll try to give you these things. Could they be creating schizophrenia and opening doors in a whole group of other people that start on these drugs, don't like the way that they feel? They start pulling out, and now they're getting like an open doorway Or again, does it almost sit in the antenna? Could there be some type of chemical receptor way to it, or am
Well,
I
it's
making sense at all with this?
yeah, it's doing something to the brain. So it's kind of like if you look at your brain as a radio receiver, like a radio. You know, it's and you start pouring syrup on that radio, it's not going to work right. You know, these drugs interfere with your normal processing. Uh, you can't think straight when you're on these things. They feel awful.
And the
But
other side of it, I'm sorry, to me is that for thousands of years, shaman have used consciousness altering chemicals, alkaloids, etc., to open themselves up to entities, to literally possess them, to take control of their bodies in sometimes a way to teach, to heal, to some ceremonial thing for the tribe, bring rain, bring food, bring plenty. And then you turn that on its head, and to me, it's a frequency thing. If you're coming at it with positive, if you're looking for good, you're going to find good. If you're looking for bad, you're going to get bad. And these guys are obviously the psychiatric mafia are looking for bad. They are trying to create bad frequencies in people so they get more patients, just like dentists create more patients by the fucking horrible care they give. It's just a vicious cycle. But to me, like I said, it's more of a frequency that it creates inside you. It changes what can get to you, what is it like attracted to your frequency, in my opinion.
Meth does that. I mean, meth attracts
See,
these negative
the dark
entities.
things will be in the corner talking to two different guys hitting that stuff. Our buddy James True has dealt with patients, and he said they've had conversations with the same dark entity over in the corner while they're on this stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. And there was a movie that even showed that. What was that movie where the guy did some kind of meth in it, and he wound up seeing all the little, y'all, come on, it was an animated movie out a few years ago that had a lot of hidden crap in it.
The shadow people.
Something that showed dark people. I'll find it. I'll find the reference. But anyway, yeah, definitely the frequency is key.
And the voices will tell them sometimes to do things like meth or cocaine or drink alcohol.
So, Cammy, if I can expand on your question a little bit, you're asking about. I'm sorry, Zach. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please.
Now we just all get excited, and now go ahead, man.
Okay, Cammy, you were talking about, is the pharmaceutical mafia creating drugs to kind of induce schizophrenia? And Jerry can expand on this as well. I think the psychiatric mafia is more about the tranquilizers, creating the tranquilizers, and that's something the entities don't like. They don't want their victims or targets being tranquilized. The entities want their targets to be, I guess, stimulated, over anger, overexcited. Which I think that's where the meth and the heroin comes in, and the fentanyl. So I don't think the psychiatric mafia per se is creating drugs that are causing schizophrenia, but they're not creating drugs that are helping the patient or target. They're just wiping out their brains, so there's nothing left.
But in a way, they're almost opening, like with the Zyban, the Wellbutrin, first stopped smoking at Zyban, and just again, for migraines, they tried to give me another one that again, when you quit it, it was supposed to do seizures and things like that. They try to get you addicted on these things, and people don't like the feeling of it, so they stop taking it. It seems to open doors. I mean, it seems like an intentional pharmacia addiction that. So you think opening the doors to demons is almost not an intent, because the demons, like the more hyped up, like the meth.
Yeah.
But I would still think that you're coming out of it, even reading the chat on some people when they quit taking their SSRIs or whatever, and what happened to them, it seemed to open a real dark doorway temporarily.
Might have been the
maybe
rebound,
a different type, like
the
a
rebound aspect.
Right.
Rebound effect.
To a new group of people even. Do you think there's any like genetics or chemical to this targeting or to this schizophrenia? Or I mean, what do you think? Why do you think people are targeted more than others, or what's your gut?
Well, from what I've seen over the hundreds of schizophrenic patients I've worked with, the number one thing that seems to bring it on is trauma. It's severe emotional, physical, or sexual abuse that's prolonged. we'll bring it on. I don't think there's any genetic marker, and they haven't found any. They keep, they started blaming it on mothers, and then they started blaming it on genetics, and they didn't find anything there. And now their latest thing is chemical imbalance, and they don't have any proof of that either. Matter of fact, it's been disproved over and over and over again. That so they have to keep making up some stuff about what causes it, because they have no idea. This is a spiritual battle, and I think Sherry and Anon can testify to that. It's a spiritual battle. It's not a physical thing. And pouring those drugs on top of the voices is like trying to get rid of a magnetic field by pouring Thorazine on top of a magnet. It just doesn't work.
I'm smiling when I hear Jerry talk about the chemical
He's talking
imbalance.
in my language, by the way. Thank you, Jerry. Keep going.
Magnetics, right.
And the genetics. I heard that all when I was in the hospital. Oh, it's a chemical imbalance. It could be genetic, something genetic. And I was thinking, if it's a chemical imbalance, what was the baseline supposed to be before I went into this condition? Because mine came on in my mid 20s. So that means, okay, what was the state of my chemical brain as a teenager, as an adolescent, as a young adult? If it was a chemical imbalance, there should have been a baseline in which those chemical markers could have been measured. But they never presented any data on that or anything. They just told you that, it's a chemical imbalance.
Yeah, and that's what the drug companies are pushing. And I noticed that didn't fly when I was working at the state hospital, because I noticed that when a patient went in to a psychiatrist's office, they didn't give them any kind of test to find out what was out of balance or by how much. So I'm like, well, how do they know what's out of balance before they reach into their bag of drugs and start, plastering people with drugs? They have no idea. There is no test. They just go, it's like a dartboard. They go, well, we think this one will work. And if that doesn't work, they try another one, and then they try another one. They try another one until they run out of their bag of tricks, and then they just stick you with the one they think works the best. And they're all major tranquilizers, and they all cause neurological damage. They will shrink your brain, and they'll rot out your peripheral nervous system. And then they tried to lie their way out of the autopsies when they started doing autopsies on chronically schizophrenic patients. They saw that their brains were shrunk. And when they brought that up, the drug companies and the psychiatric mafia went, "Oh no, it's not the drugs. It's not the drugs. It's the schizophrenia. That's what's doing it."
That's the reason they had schizophrenia, because their brains were so small.
Yeah,
right?
They tried to push that off, and then they started giving it to rats and monkeys, and they saw that their brains were shrunk too. So these medicines actually do physiological damage to your nervous system with long-term use. They are toxic. They're poisonous. They use them for control of the patient because they have no other way to control them. The voices will take them over, and then they start. I don't know how many mothers I get the call that they're. I had one. Was yesterday where the son shot the grandmother 3 times, and here's the mother going, "What can I do to save him?" No, there's nothing you can do to say. You leave him in jail, leave him in prison. Don't even try to get him out, otherwise. Your life will be at risk.
Yeah. Now, I heard Anon say that he was in his mid-20s when this came on.
It usually comes on around 25.
That was exactly. Yep.
That. What's the youngest age of a person that you've seen with this?
Oh, geez, very young. 7, 8, and more than I would think. More than I would think. When I was working in the emergency rooms, covering the children's ward. I was like, holy cow, man. I couldn't believe it. Yeah,
Sherry, what age were you when you think you first had your experiences?
I was working at the state hospital, wondering, I guess I was in my late 20s or early 30s. But, that was one I prayed for. It's like, I want to experience these. I want to know what they're like. And
how about you, Sherry? What age did you first encounter some of this stuff?
Well, my journey actually started when I was about 3 years old, and I became aware that the voices in my head were not mine by the time I was like 7, maybe.
So very young then.
Yeah. So, 'When I was 5 years old, after going through the trauma that I went through from age 3 to 6. I was about 5 years old, and I remember thinking, you know what, I don't really want to do this again. It was like I knew that I had been here before and done this before, and I didn't want to do it again. I was trying to figure out what these thoughts, they weren't audible voices, they were intrusive thoughts.
Sherry, how did you make the differentiation between your thoughts and these voices? How did you tell the difference?
They were contrary to what I was really thinking. The intent was off. The intent was way off. It's like the intent was, kill yourself, kill your father, kill your dog, whatever. It was like really bad stuff, and I would never ever do that. So I knew that those weren't my voices, but I didn't know what they were at the time. And so
amazing that you made that distinction and knew at that age.
Yeah, it is amazing that I made the distinction and didn't realize that or realize that they weren't mine and didn't follow through with the instructions. I mean, my goodness. So then I didn't really learn. I knew not to say anything to anybody about this because I grew up in the age of children are seen and not heard. So when I would come up with a question, like a big question, like, where do thoughts come from? When I was like 5, and where do they go once we think them? What happens to them once we're done thinking about them? Where do they go? What do they do? Do they keep on thinking or what? Who knows, right? So I had those kinds of questions, and the adults in my life were like, what a stupid question. And so I just clammed up and kept everything to myself. And I was pretty isolated anyway as a child, until I went till I got put in an orphanage. I was the only kid there that had parents. Everybody else were really orphans.
Yeah, and the voices themselves will tell them not to say anything about hearing them, otherwise they'll get locked up, and that's what happens.
And you do get locked up, and when I was growing up, I know that if I had said anything about hearing these intrusive thoughts that weren't mine, I would be sent to, a psychiatrist, and probably I was afraid that I'd be thrown into an asylum.
Primarily for the rest of our lives, right?
For the rest of my life, yeah. Yep. And then I wouldn't be, my life would be over. So I knew that early on, and so I never said a word to anybody. In fact, I never told anybody about this until after Jerry and I had been buddies and partners for over 10 years.
Yeah, and that shocked me when she said, "Oh, yeah, I was telling her about a case I was working with at the prison," and that kind of amazed me. And then I'm like, "Wow, this happened." And Sherry goes, "Oh, I know all about that. This is 10 years after I met him." Then she tells me, "Oh, I know about the voices," and I'm like, "What?"
And this is after I healed myself. After I figured out how to heal myself. But Walt, you mentioned frequencies, and you're right on about that. You're perfect on that. This is all about frequencies because they feed off of our negative energy, which is a frequency.
Yeah, they do.
And so they seek that, and they seek it. And the way that they do it is they have to turn our energy into a negative emotion or a negative idea, a negative thought, something really negative, so they can siphon off that negative energy.
So they put those negative thoughts in your head.
They do it through trickery. They're masters of manipulation. They can change your perception.
And gaslighting.
Absolutely. And that's when I see the gaslighting going on in this country and the world, I know that that's what's going on. That's that entity that's doing that to everybody in the world through the media and all that stuff. That's, whatever. Those are the tools that they're using.
Sherry, could you give an example of how the voices work when they're gaslighting? What was that like? And Anon, you too. When they gaslight you, what were they doing? Just exactly how was that working?
Well, I'm going to, you're saying frequencies. That's definitely, I think it's vibrations too. Like they tune in certain vibrations They aim for the negative ones. They sniff them out like sharks, and then they start
Yeah.
to amplify them. They want them to resonate. They want them to have higher amplitudes. So you have these
Yeah.
negative vibrations. They're trying to increase the amplitude of those vibrations. Speaking
Absolutely.
like, from a
Yes.
technical standpoint here, as high as possible.
Exactly.
The gaslighting was, there was things that it defied logic. What the way to detect gaslighting is by applying logic, because logic will tell you the series of facts or details that occurred in a situation. Whereas the gaslighting relies on the manipulation of emotions. You can't really manipulate logic quite the same way. So I found that was one way to detect if gaslighting was going on, was what they were saying went against logic. It was trying to make you emotionally agitated, but it itself did not follow a series of logical conclusions, I would say.
Right. And so they would tell you something, and then they would turn around and tell you something that is like the opposite of what they just said.
Flip flop.
Yeah, they do a flip flop on you.
We have a question in the chat. This one's by VK, and it's kind of to everyone, but I wanted to hear if you guys had any insight on this. He asked, anybody else here that watched the interview with Jerry and Anon a few weeks ago notice them messing with you harder afterwards? Almost like if you're aware now that these things exist, are they going to then target you harder? Or do you think it's maybe they're aware now, so they notice these things?
They're frustrated. I would say in my case, I feel like I've won, and they know that. So they keep trying. But for example, I was actually doing an interview somewhere else, and we got this weird noises coming through. I could hear them. The podcaster could not hear from their end. When they played back the recording, they started to hear them afterwards, and there was more on the recording than what occurred during the initial interview. And it was very, very, very strange. So that, I mean, okay, we can go woo-woo there, but that was an odd thing. It happened just as I was telling this the story of the vision or hallucination that I had. So I would say they continue to test, but as far as taking the test, it's a lot easier. I mean, you can see right away, okay, we're trying to move down a negative path. So to answer your listener's question there, or at least from my standpoint, they keep trying, but I think they get less and less successful.
Yeah, once you know how to get rid of them, then when they try, they can't be successful. I mean, just today, I was hearing things like, having thoughts like, okay, you don't really want to do this today. You don't, you got things to do. You're too busy. And I'm like, okay, never mind. I know what this is. So I do my little thing and it works every time. It might sound kind of, weird, but I just say, okay, I know who you are. I send you love. Goodbye.
Oh,
and they're
wow.
gone. They
That's
are
the
gone.
best approach.
They don't like that cosmic love coming their way. That's the answer for me anyway, and it has worked for an awful lot of people. You can say, I've developed this program called That's a Lie program, and Jerry has used it, and a lot of other people used it on his patients, and a lot of other people that are in our Hearing Voices group on Facebook have used it. And some of them will write saying, do a testimony. We asked them, can we put this up on our website as a testimony, because we need other people to know how this is working for them. So we have a testimony page on Jerry's website that, where we're adding all the testimonies of people saying, this is wonderful, this works so well. And all they're doing is calling them out as liars, saying that's not true, that's a lie. And now I want to get them to the point of understanding that that's step one. And the next step is to send them love. I mean, when I first told Jerry about that, he's like, I can't love these guys. They're, they're horrible. They're, they're really dark. They're nasty. They're mean. They're victim. They're vicious. And I understand that, but we're not loving them. We're sending them love. There's a big difference in that. We're sending them.
They do recoil from that.
They absolutely recoil from it. So that's what I do when I get those things nowadays. that wasn't the way it was before I developed that, but because I did a lot of suffering. But yeah, so that works beautifully.
Isn't that the core of all true religion? Is love?
Well,
Yeah,
it's the
love and
core of human
forgiveness.
beings. It's who we are. We're made by love, and we don't know that. Most people don't know that. But if we knew that, if everybody knew that they were made with love, maybe they'd think twice about doing some of the things they do.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this a jump a whole quantum leap here. I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Did you encounter the black smoke or the illuminated fog in sort of visual hallucinations?
I did. Yeah, I was experimenting with a group of people who were practicing Reiki, and at the time I was running a prison reform organization. It was actually a human rights organization. So we were trying to get abuse out of the prisons, and we were also trying to fix the courts, which was kind of a vision of grandeur, I guess, at the time, because I didn't know that was just the tip of the iceberg at the time. But anyway, so these were people, there was like 5 of us, and we were scattered all over the world. And so we would get together at a particular time, and we would pick one prison. We would agree on one prison to send them Reiki as a healing energy and see if that had any effect at all. So we would have, somebody who communicated with us through letters in a particular prison. We'd get it all set up, and then we'd go ahead and do that. So we were starting to have some successes where the abuse was lessened. The guards were even polite, which is kind of really different in some of these prisons where the guards just they're pretty abusive. So the prisoner wrote back saying the prisoners would write back saying, I noticed this difference, and I noticed this difference, and I noticed that the fights were lessened, the rapes were lessened. And so the bullying was even lessened. And so we're like, okay, this is working. Let's do some more. So this one particular time we were doing this, and all of a sudden the lights went out, my computer shut down, and I was living in a small apartment. So I was in the living room, and then just a few feet away was the kitchen. And I looked up, I felt this horrible, dark, heavy frequency on me. And I looked ahead, and there was this black, I call it smoke because I don't know what it was, but it was darker than the darkness of the room. And so I could see it. And it was kind of swirled around like a tornado, but not fast. It was kind of slow motion.
Like ink flowing through a fluid, right?
Yeah, something like that. That's a good description. Yeah, that's a good description. So this thing started coming my way. And I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on here? I mean, I had never had a hallucination like that, or a vision like that. I'd had some visions, but not like that. So this thing starts coming toward me, and telepathically, it yelled at me, these prisons are mine. And I thought, oh shit, excuse my French.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, it scared me really, really bad. And then I got a grip on myself, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I know what this is. And so I just said, you don't have any power here. And it said back, well, who do you think you are? I'm the powerful one. You have no power. So, okay, so we're having this little argument. And finally I said, that's a lie. That's a lie. It was before I knew the I send you love thing. And so it went away. And then I tried to get a hold of the other people in the group to tell them what had happened. And everything was still off. So a few seconds later, here it comes again, really in full force. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it started saying the same thing over and over again. And for some reason, it struck my funny bone, and I thought of a Monty Python script, and I started laughing my head off. And it vanished. it completely vanished.
You
And
were
the
still in
lights came,
control. You were
the
still in
lights
control.
came back on, and the computer came back on, and that was the end of it that night. It was an amazing thing, really.
Okay, we have another question from the chat. This one is from Capalicious420. They ask, how does sleep paralysis relate to schizophrenia? Do the entities seen during sleep paralysis differ from the entities schizophrenic people see or hear?
I mean, I've encountered sleep paralysis many times, but I don't recall actually seeing anything during the sleep paralysis. I really can't comment on that, but I've had sensations of something heavy being on top of me. I know Jerry's encountered some of that as well.
Yeah, repeatedly.
Now, I think some of these entities are malicious. Some of these entities are benevolent. I think there's a mix out there in the world of thought or consciousness of consciousness, the beyond the veil, the other realm. So I'm not going to say all these entities are bad. I think some are actually good at trying to help us. It's just I'm trying to sort through which are which. So sometimes I feel like you can be in a state of sleep paralysis and almost have a blissful or ecstatic experience. I think that's with some of the more benevolent entities. So yeah, I can't. I've never had a visual hallucination during a sleep paralysis episode, so I really can't give any more insights on that. Anybody else?
Well, I haven't heard of it in my patients either. And now it is a precursor to leaving your body. But as far as the schizophrenics I
You
work
beat
with,
me to it, Jerry. That was what I was going to mention. Is it happens a lot when I'm preparing myself for like astral projection, things like that. It's part of it. You know, at that point when things are suddenly you're about to head out, and that also can happen with the tax, where I don't know. Again, I've developed a lot of things over the years dealing with these entities. But the sleep paralysis, the idea that they put forward in medicine about it being part of the sleep cycle and things like that, yeah, it just didn't ever jive with me that way, especially being as astrally active as I am. So it always felt to me like that was just part of their attacks. That was part of something they are able to manipulate when you're in that right place where you're still and your soul is still and your spirit and everything is settled, and again, I think it has something to do with laying down. I think when your pineal gland gets in this different electrical plane, shout out Hacksaw wherever you are, brother, when your pineal gland gets in that plane of laying down, I think changes happen too a lot that allow these things to either be able to mess with you, or if you have defenses, not mess with you, but attempt to mess with you, either dreams, the voices, attacks, literally physical attacks. Now, that all being said, I've had it happen literally in the midst of a daytime discussion of these fucking things with a significant other. We were going through some very emotional turmoil at the time. It wasn't she had gone through some sexual trauma. We were working through all that, and literally I was thrown to the bed and held down with something on my chest, holding my arms down. I mean, it can be that physical. Anyway, I don't want to get off on too much on my stuff. You guys have way too many interesting stories to share.
Yeah,
and the questions are flowing. I've got a few backed up here I'm going to ask y'all too, but go ahead and finish up.
On the sleep paralysis thing, I've had several in my life, but I haven't had them recently. And I have done out-of-body travel, so I know what you're going through there. But yeah, so this one was sleep paralysis, and it was in the form of a dream, but it was a vivid dream, a very vivid dream, like it was real. And I was in a pickup truck, and some guy was trying to pull me out of the truck, and I was putting my foot in his chest to push him away, and he was too strong. And I fought with every ounce of everything that I had. And I jerked myself out of sleep. So, I mean, that was, that happens a lot. And so, or that did happen a lot. And so, and I've had dreams where they were very pleasant dreams. And then all of a sudden there'd be some weird creature entered the scene, and with this, giving me really ugly faces and trying to scare me, and then I would laugh and they would go away, because even in the dream I was aware that wasn't real. That was either a figment of my imagination or it was the voices starting to, mess with me. So now when I see a scary face, whether it's on a human being or not, I just laugh.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
The thing is, you can't have fear. You want to have fear because that's the normal reaction, but you can't have fear because that's a negative frequency and they'll suck that out of you.
You have to go against your
It's one of their
instinctive fear.
favorite frequencies. Go ahead.
Yep, that's exactly right. You can't show fear. I mean, all the patients I work with, all the criminally insane people I've dealt with, you can't show fear. It's like running from an attacking dog. And I don't know if this was sleep paralysis or not, but what I found is when I learned enough to help some of these prisoners get rid of their voices and the voices were gone, that night I would get crushed down into the bed at about 3 a.m. and it was like something was crushing me down into the bed.
A literal weight on you.
A literal weight.
Yes, sir. I know it well.
That's when you were taking two or three more patients a day, and then you backed off to one patient after that.
I couldn't do that. I had to lower it down to one because it was too draining. If I did 3 patients a day working with schizophrenics in the prison and actually really getting down working with them, I came home drained. I couldn't get anything done. I just collapsed on the sofa and was wiped out. So I had to cut it down to 1, which is what I do now in my practice. It's just 1 a day because it's too draining.
By the way, I wanted to mention that on my website, I haven't transferred it over to Jerry's website yet, but all the things that Jerry is saying about chemical imbalance and about the what's the Bible called? The
23rd Psalm?
No, the schizophrenic Bible, the
DSM.
DSM, yeah, I couldn't think of it. Anyway, so so all the things that Jerry is saying, I went and did a lot of research for our book, and I found a lot of documentation to back up everything Jerry's saying. So I have that all on our website in case someone wants to check him out, because this is all, I wouldn't call it science because science doesn't do the non-physical yet. But so this is all verified by other psychiatrists who came across the same thing and actually wrote about it a long time ago.
Yeah, this is a spiritual battle. It's not a chemical imbalance. It's not a psychiatric disorder. It's a spiritual battle.
Well, good science would be telling us that we should have the patients talk to these voices. Let's find out what they're saying, not shut them down, because that's exactly what it is.
And that's one thing I saw when I was at the state hospital. Nobody was asking what the voices were saying except me. They had all been brainwashed that these are hallucinations and you don't pay any attention to hallucinations. So they just ignored them. They're like, ignore them. They're just hallucinations. They're not hallucinations.
Well, they have changed their tactics too. Have you noticed, Jerry, that there are some groups that are forming of, you hear voices, join this group, we'll help you out. And they're teaching the people to learn how to deal with to learn how to be friends with their voices. Well, we know a psychiatrist, or Jerry knows a psychiatrist. We talked about him in our book, Van Dusen, and he tried that tactic. He tried to make friends with the voices, and they just tricked him.
Yeah, he didn't learn much. I mean, he actually gave him a Rorschach. He got one patient who was very psychotic, and he gave the Rorschach and an MMPI to the voices, and then independently he gave it those 2 tests, which are the gold standard for psychology and psychiatry. He gave them independently to the patient, and he said the voices came out much more psychotic than the patient did. So he didn't learn a whole lot from trying to be friends with them. I learned a whole lot by trying to figure out ways to get rid of them, to kill them or drive them off, because they were fighting for their lives then. So you get a real good look at what they're composed of when they're fighting for their lives.
Anon, did you notice that that some of the voices sounded a bit robotic?
Yeah, I mean, like most of the times I was dealing with them, it was actually my own thoughts. Almost like one side of my mind was fighting the other side of my mind. But I do remember when I was in the psychiatric hospital, there was about 48 hours where I was truly hearing multiple voices of all different tones and inflections, where it was men, women, and children. And I described it as chatter, the chatter that goes on before like a show or a play starts. It was just so much, it was a cacophony. Now I didn't really pay any attention to them. They probably might have been trying to talk to me or talking about me or trying to reach me, but I kind of blew them off. I didn't take them as being serious. And in the hospital, every single time they kept asking me, "Are you hearing voices?" I would kind of say, "Well, I'm hearing some stuff just because I can't fall asleep. It's like the way like I'm awake dreaming." But I never said specifically, "Yes, I am hearing voices." So as far as robotic goes, I think at times yes, but I can't say distinctly all the time. And
I
I
know.
don't. It seemed to be several different entities though too, because I noticed their attacks would change. So I don't think it was just the same one each time, because when they finished one particular attack or they were unsuccessful at it, they would change a different approach, and they would almost like the words that they were saying were different inflections. Different types of words are being used depending on the entity that was doing the attack.
Yeah, I noticed that not all of them, but there were toward the end when I was coming close to healing myself, they became more and more robotic. It's like being in a room with a bunch of people yelling the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. It'll drive you nuts.
Yeah,
You know,
and
it's
what
like
Oh, by
yeah, so
robotic, you mean repetitive?
yeah, they just keep
Oh
repeating
yeah,
the
yeah. I'm
same
sorry.
thing
I thought
over
you
and
meant the
over.
sound. I thought you
I,
meant
No,
I
no,
thought she
no,
meant like the
no.
quality of it as well, Anon. I thought that's
Okay.
what she meant
Oh,
too.
repetitive.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, sorry
definitely,
about that.
definitely.
Yeah,
No,
I
I
got you now.
got you now. I got it. The
But I
repetitive
would
part.
clarify
Yeah.
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
So what they would,
repetitive.
I
Absolutely.
would get over one particular thing that they would tell me, some lie that they would tell me, and I would tell them it's a lie, and I would go on, trying to develop, okay, that's a lie. I need to use a different part of my brain when that kind of thing happens. And so I would be healed of that particular thing. And sure enough, they'd say the same thing over, they'd say it again. And it already doesn't work on me. So you would think that they would say something that might work on me, something they haven't tried before, but they don't seem to. That's what makes me think that they're programmed anyway, or they kind of act robotic. They can't think for themselves or something.
Well, one thing I
It's almost
noticed
like they
that
have a
is work.
script.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have
yeah,
a script, and
exactly.
they can't deviate from it.
And that's what I noticed working in these different psychiatric settings. I mean, a lot of different psychiatric settings, and then moving from the East Coast to Arizona. In all these settings, the voices were telling the patients the same exact stuff. It was these same patterns. It was like they were all made in the same cookie cutter. They were all saying the same kinds of things, these same patterns from institution to institution to institution, all the way across the United States. And then when I got out to Arizona, the voices are telling patients the same exact stuff over and over and over again. It's like you guys were saying. It's like they were all educated in the same school and then released, and that what they're telling the psychiatric patients, what they're telling schizophrenics, is the same exact stuff that the mainstream media are telling us today. It's the same stuff, word for word.
Yeah, be afraid,
pattern
be
for
afraid.
pattern. Be afraid, be isolated.
Put a mask over your face.
Put a mask over your face.
Right.
Don't talk to
Ignore
anybody.
everybody. Don't
This
talk
is
to
going to
anybody.
sound really off the wall, but there was a period I had experimented with salvia once and didn't really understand what it was. It's a psychotropic plant herb that it was used by indigenous shamanistic cultures to actually access their ancestors, their voices of their ancestors. That's what it's specifically used for. Well, I got a hold to it through some friends and blah, blah, blah. Younger, didn't really know. So, yeah, sure, I'll try to smoke some of that. I did. And when I did, these electric vines grew up through the earth into my body. And all these voices in the room started talking to me, saying things, or not talking to me, talking about me, saying, yeah, he didn't know that was going to happen. That's going to freak him out. Now he's going to think he's got to go to the hospital. Watch. And they were all talking about me. I'm getting chills telling you guys this. They were all different. It was like just a freaking loud cacophony of voices. So after that little 15-second window passed, I put that stuff away, went and did a lot more research on it, found out about the aspect of it being used to access ancestral voices, and never touched it again. Literally have never touched it again. Well, moving forward over time, I began to notice those voices would become audible through other audio sources. Like if there was static happening on a TV, this is how old I am, there they would pop in. If there was water trickling in a sink, hell, if I was urinating sometimes, I know that sounds so insane, but those voices would like pick up into the frequency of it and start speaking through it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, they need the energy. They don't have enough energy to do it on their own, but they can ride. I don't know if you ever saw the movie White Noise. You know, the whole movie is about that, where these entities
I have
come
not,
through.
but I will have to watch it now. Oh my God.
Yeah,
It's a little creepy though. I just warning you.
well,
I'm okay with scary. I don't mind that. I just, I haven't seen it. White Noise, right?
That's what a lot of my patients have told me. Yeah, when they're static through the TV, through running water, through
running water. That
static
was the one that would
on the
drive me the
radio,
most insane. It would just be
refrigerator.
like, oh my God, I know I'm not hearing these voices in the urine. Come on.
They need the extra energy to kind of power them through.
It's a carrier wave. They're riding like a carrier vibration.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's another movie called Odd Thomas.
Oh, I love that book and movie. He's one of my favorite authors. He talks a lot about these entities and being able to see them. He wrote a book. Oh man, what was Twilight Eyes? And it was literally about being able to see these creatures behind the masks, and not just like entities. These were physical beings that were actually amongst us, kind of riding over these spiritual beings, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And Twilight Eyes, go check it out. Dean Kuntz, amazing book. But I will definitely. Odd Thomas is one of my favorites.
Yeah, well, and when I saw, I didn't finish seeing it, but I started seeing it, and then I think I got busy doing something else. But so I saved it, and I'll watch it again. But when it showed the creatures in the smoky essence that they had,
right?
I'm like, oh my God, that's what I saw.
Right. Interesting that actor passed away in the bizarre circumstances that he passed away in afterward, not long after that, actually. Some kind of bizarre Jeep accident that really shouldn't have happened. I can't remember the details now. I'll look it up in a second, but interesting.
Well, you hit on something there when you talk about, the carrier waves riding on the sound of water and other things. But I also think sometimes they can also become almost like carrier onto our beings as well. It's something that might have more of these entities riding them in a sense. Like with Jerry's patients, someone he knows where they're just too far gone. I mean, that could be a case where it's no longer a carrier way. They've totally taken over the person. And I know, Jerry, you had a way that you distinguish when somebody was kind of too far gone, where you didn't think there was hope to bring them back, correct? There's some criteria.
Yeah, there's that's what I'm telling some of these mothers now is this guy ain't coming back. Even with meds, he's most likely not going to come back. And these people, these patients have killed somebody, and they're in prison. And here's the mothers, like, what can I do for them? The mothers being mothers, and I'm having to tell them, they're gone. You're not going to get them back.
It's the same as the moose up there that get covered in those ticks, those parasites. There is no, once they turn all white and they get all, if you remove the ticks, that would kill them.
Wow.
And the ticks being there is killing them. They're gone. There's nothing you can do for them anymore. The parasite won.
And that's relatively rare, where they're completely taken over. But it happens, it happens. And once they're taken over, they're no longer the same person that the mothers knew. There might be a little bit of them left, and there's very, very seldom have I seen somebody who has been completely taken over. I can count it on one hand. There's usually a battle between the personality who is in the body and the voices, and they're losing the battle.
Wow. We have another question from
you got it. Go ahead.
Just 420. And it's more or less like a statement, but wondering if you guys had anything to share about cats and dogs
I was going to
having
ask
the
that one. I love it.
ability to perceive non-physical entities. Does that come into play here? Like people with cats and dogs, are they affected less? Maybe.
Well, I've seen my cats and dogs stare at something, like the little Chihuahua would start barking at the wall or something. There's nothing there. So, I've seen them pick up something I couldn't. But on the other hand, one of the symptoms of mental illness is the abuse of animals, the torturing of animals. And that's one of the first things that, you'll notice as a kid, they start torturing cats or torturing dogs. And that's a sign that it's coming or it's already there. It's a bad omen, very bad.
Wow.
Talked about trauma and how it opens the door for these things to, attach. Is it also possible that a trauma can do just the opposite? Can like almost blast these things off of you? The reason I'm asking, I had a wreck in which my fiance and I almost died. And in that wreck, I was leaving. She pulled me back, thank you. And it felt like after that, I was a clean, new person. It's the only way I can explain it. And I didn't deal with a lot of that stuff for probably about a year, I guess, at all. Nothing. Attacks, none of that. And during that time, I began to explore my world and explore some of the crazy thoughts and reasoning that didn't make any sense, and discovered that maybe some of the things I thought about the world I lived on, the world I lived in, perhaps all that wasn't true. And it almost, like I said, kind of reset me and got me open and ready for new information, a new way of looking at life, a new opening to an awareness that I had no clue I was not already at. I thought I was already a pretty aware guy that had a clue about life. Now that all got kind of washed out by the painkillers I was on for the year and a half that took my life over again. And that's a whole other show. We'll talk about that some other time and what that opened up. But definitely it felt like these things that had been attached to me, had been on me, attacking me, my family, etc., were just not there for a long time. So maybe is that?
Well, the out of the body experience that does change you. I mean, you do that, the person is not the same after that. They see the whole world differently. They see that there is a spiritual world and that they are a spiritual being, and that they are independent of their body. Now I've seen stuff in the ER where, I mean, I told this story previously. One lady, I mean, everything was going wrong in her life. Um, her son was she lost her job. She had a teenage son living with her. She was about to lose her apartment. She'd been divorced. Everything was going wrong in her life. So she decided she was going to go drive herself in front of a train in Benson, Arizona. And she was sitting at the railroad track with, waiting for the train to come by. She was, taking drugs and drinking alcohol, and she was going to drive in front of the train. So she was talking to her sister in San Diego, telling her goodbye. And the train came. She drove her car in front of the train. She was hit, and it threw her car into the next railroad track. And another train came and hit her again. And that threw her like 50 yards off the track. And she was in this smashed car. She couldn't get out. And here she is sitting in front of me in the ER with just like a black eye. And I'm like, you got hit by two trains. You were thrown 50 yards off the track, and all you got is a black eye. And I was like curious. I said, what were you thinking when you found you were still alive? She said, I was furious. I was absolutely furious. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be dead. And I said, well, what happened next? She said, well, I heard this voice saying everything is going to be fine. And she said she just felt this love, this peaceful feeling come over her, and she knew everything was going to be okay. And after that, I went, well, she's learned her lesson. I don't think she's suicidal, and I recommended she be released. And I didn't think the psychiatrists were going to approve that, but they did. So time after time after time after time with these people that tried to kill themselves. They should have been dead. Something interfered and stopped it. It's something very clear, interfered and stopped. One guy had a 357 Magnum. He put it to his head, all cylinders loaded. Clicked the trigger, went click. He pointed it at the floor, it went bam. Put it to his head, click. Put it to the floor, bam. He goes, okay, I got it. And he stuff like that. It was so common. I should have been writing these down and taking notes. But they were like lobsters used to be. I used them for dog food. Those stories were so common. I remember a handful of them, but they were life-changing events for these people.
You mentioned the out-of-body experience, Walt, and I don't know how much I went into during the last time I was on the show, but I remember after I had encountered that Chinubis-like entity, one that I projected love onto it that came out of the cloud, that there was a new entity afterwards that was very different. And I remember I had an out-of-body experience with that second entity where I actually found myself uniting with it, like we're merging together. And then I went into that portal, kind of where the cloud was, almost unified with this entity. And I don't remember what happened after that. I know people have said, oh, you should get hypnotized and find out what went on during those 4 or 5 hours, but I'm not so sure I want to know. But that out-of-body experience, that's something that tends to, I think, revive one a little bit, because I think during those experiences, I will say that the benevolent entities are kind of working with us, be them angels, be them aeons, Sephiroth, whatever you want to call them. So I think the out-of-body experience gives a little bit of taste. You might say gnosis, a little bit of taste that there's something greater, and I think that helps to kind of reset us to rebuild ourselves sometimes. To say, okay, I'm dealing with trauma in this realm of time and matter. But there is something greater beyond. And just knowing that there's something greater beyond helps us continue perseverance in our daily existence. Because after I had that experience, I would say I crossed over from being a mad person to a mystic. Because here I was dealing with an entity that was telling me God does not exist, give it up, and that was the final battle that I had with these entities. And then I prayed and prayed and prayed, and then that vision occurred. It's like, come on, there's a connection there. But the fact that I even had that vision was enough to say, okay, God does exist. However, we define however we define that being, but it negated everything those entities have been telling me for the past year.
And that's common. They are anti-religious. They don't want anything to do with the Bible. They don't want the patient reading the Bible. They don't want them going to church. They don't want them talking to preachers. They want nothing to do with God or Jesus, nothing. And they'll drive them out. And matter of fact, I noticed there were 3 different levels of it. If a person went to church hearing voices and the voices were weak, then the voices would leave. If the voices were moderate, they'd just be flapping away and trying to distract the person from hearing anything that the preacher had to say. If they were strong, they would drive them completely out of the church. They would virtually run out of the church. So they're definitely anti-religious. They're anti-God. They're anti-Jesus. They're any kind of positive spiritual anything. They are not good things.
You are in a way almost addressing this question from Big Pine Sailing in chat. What ways do you have that patients can confront these entities or voices?
Well, you have to realize they're not you to start with. And then, what Sherry found out and I did before I even met her was that they're liars. They are consummate liars. 98% of what they tell the patient is a lie. All they want to do is upset you. And it's a lot easier to upset you telling a lie if they can get you to believe it. And like Sherry's program will definitely weaken them because they can't get a grip. If you're not listening to what they're saying and you're confronting them and saying that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie, they can't get their hands on you. They can't control you if you're kind of throwing them off. But it becomes a battle.
And that's because when you're telling them that's a lie, you're not having negative energy. You're not protruding any kind of negative energy. You're not necessarily exuding positive energy, but you're not food for them.
What they are is like fishermen. They bait the hook. They have complete access to your memory. they can bait the hook with something that they found in there that's awful, and they'll throw it in front of you, and they'll see if you bite on it. And if you bite on it, they'll reel you in. If you go, that's a lie, you don't bite on it, then they don't got you. They got to bait the hook with something else. But they have complete access to your memory. They can pull up anything that you're guilty of, that you feel bad about, and they can throw it in your mind and just kind of, look what you did, look what you said, look what you did, and we're the only animal on the planet that does that, that has that happen to us. You look at, dogs or deer that are chased by a lion or something, and as soon as the threat is gone, they're just back to living in the present again. Not humans.
Well, they like to bring up all the stupid, terrible things that you did, the embarrassing things that you did. They love that. And, so I used to go through that too. And I'm sure Anon did too.
Oh, the most minuscule of stuff. I mean, they use you as their star witness.
Things you hadn't thought of for, 20 years, maybe 30 years, depending on how old you are. But yeah, so then all of a sudden there'd be this memory of something that happened a long, long time ago, and it was a real embarrassing thing, and I wished it hadn't happened, or it was something I did that was, I wish I hadn't done that. And so I would try, it would be over and over and over again. It was like I was mulling over it. I traveled back to that point, and it's like, no, I don't even want to go there. I want to be here. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And finally one day I said, you know what? That was then and this is now. So I send you love. And they would just go away. So to me, that's the answer, is just don't, you don't have to go to that old memory again. It comes up, and instead of mulling it over and reliving it over and over again, you can't it's like a song playing in your head that you just can't get rid of. Just say that was then and this is now. I'm not that person anymore.
I think projecting love onto it is one of the best weapons or tools that you use against them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the things they do is they'll go to the traumas you've had, where somebody triggers you because of something you buried, and they'll just pour gasoline on it. Somebody comes up, it's somebody you don't like, somebody you've had conflict with, they'll just pour gasoline and light the fire, just trying to generate that negative emotional energy. That's what they feed off of. That's their food
pushing
source.
the buttons.
Yeah, pushing the buttons.
Yep.
Now, we all have negative thoughts, and I'm sure the stuff we're saying, you're probably thinking, oh, I think that was sometimes too, but it's these entities, they're amplifying them. They're taking them to the extreme all the time. It almost becomes a broken record in your head with some of the things that they're doing. And you talk about using your thoughts against you, the most minuscule of stuff. I mean, you could have been as a 4-year-old child, you could have stolen a 5-cent candy out of a candy jar at the local 5 and 10. You were 4 years old. They will bring that up and use it against you. See, you're a horrible human being. You stole that piece of candy when you were 4 years old.
Oh yeah, they can even do something that you thought about doing and then decided, no, that was wrong and I'm not going to do it. And they will make it be like you did do it, and shame on you, and you should be ashamed of yourself for doing that thing, and you didn't even do it. You thought you were going to do it, and then you realized, no, that's not a right thing to do, so you didn't do it. But they have a way of getting into that memory, and in fact, they will even turn something good that I did, and I knew it was a good thing. And they tried to twist it around to make it be like a bad thing. I'm like, okay, so that's a lie. I send you love. So I know that sounds like a broken record, but it works every single time.
But you keep singing that song because it is the key. That, to me, humor is also another one that works great. Laughing at their asses.
Oh yeah, they don't like that.
Oh my God, they hate that.
Oh yeah, they hate. I had patients that did that, man, and they hate being laughed at. They hate being mocked.
It means
yeah, I think that I'm seeing that more and more people are starting to mock the crazy so-called leaders out there, and I think that's having a good effect.
Yeah. You see pictures of Gates with a monkey head with his monkey pox. Yeah, that was a great one. Yeah, here's the monkey pox. But I had one guy. He didn't pay a dime loan 20 years earlier, and the voices were ragging him for that. You didn't pay that dime.
That's one to laugh at.
Yeah, but that was 20 years, and he'd long forgotten about it, and they brought it up. I had another example that was on the opposite end of that, and I forgot what it was.
We've been mostly discussing ways to, ignore them.
Can't ignore them.
Well, get them to stop, kind of fighting back in a way. We're on the defensive all the time. Is there anyone out there or any groups that are like in search of these things? And, somehow, is there a way to attack them? Instead of always being on the defense, once you realize what it is there a way? I did something crazy in my head. It makes me feel like I'm crazy because of what happened. After our last talk, one of them was, came by and said hi. And I do this exercise all the time where I imagine myself as a ball of light. And I'm a ball of light that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, when I was doing this thing appeared in front of me. And it was I believe it was one of them showing itself to me. And what I did is I wrapped it in my light and I captured it. And all the other ones around started freaking out, and I started hearing, all kinds of stuff. Like they were upset, multiple of them, not just one. I could tell it was like a group that was saying all kinds of different things to me. Let him go, this and that, And I don't know. Is it possible to do something like that?
Oh yeah, I do it all the time. It shuts them. I use it to shut them up when I'm working with somebody who they just are hammering on. I can't get through to them. So you wrap them up in light, and if you really want to torment them, you put. So what's interesting is these things are energy.
Well, I held it. I put it in
energy.
my left palm, and I kept it there for a while. But ever since I did that, I've been drained.
You use a lot of energy, my friend, to make that ball and put that thing in it and keep it there. It takes a lot of fucking energy. You need to recharge.
Yeah, I held it there for a while. I let it go finally, but I held it for a long time.
I wouldn't hold it. I
throw it away.
I kick them out to outer space.
Right, there you go.
It's like throw out into outer space.
That's what it's for.
And what's interesting when I first learned that what you vividly imagine happens in their world, you can, I first locked them up in a box of light, and that would stop the physical things they were doing to the patient. Oh, they're giving me a headache, or I got a pain in my stomach, or they're giving me a headache, or, that wrapping them up in a box of light, a prison of light would stop that, but it wouldn't stop them from talking. So I'd ask the patient, well, how are you feeling now? Well, the pain is going away, but they're still talking. So I remember one time I imagined duct tape around the mouth of whatever this entity was. And I said, okay, what's happening now? And they said, well, I can't hear them saying, talking, but what they're doing is like, So, what was happening, what I was imagining happening to them was actually happening in their world. And I could get rid of them temporarily by shooting them off into space, but in 10 minutes they'd be back, doing it again. But I just needed time to get through to the patient because they were just so loud that the guy couldn't concentrate on what I was saying.
Yeah, every time I did make my ball of light, while I had it, I stored it in my left palm, right at the base of it. And every time I'd make my ball of light, there would always be this black dot in the ball. And that's why I got rid of it, because I couldn't stand seeing that stupid little black dot there. It was like I knew it was there while I do that exercise. It's something I do a lot.
Maybe don't hold them in your palm anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
But Jerry, you I tell the story of the one that you sent to the light. That's a good
Oh yeah. So there was one prisoner I was working with where it was a period of time when I was actually having conversations with the voices. I would talk to them, just like I'm talking to you. And there was one prisoner where he had, I think he had two of them. And what I'd do is I'd say that they're told by their higher ups that they don't have any light within them, and that if they don't if they don't do what their higher ups tell them, so there's a what do you call it, a hierarchy, so they have like sergeants and commanders and so if they're told that if they don't do what they're told to do, they will cease to exist, and they believe that. And what I found really interesting is that they have life too, of sorts, so there must be some kind of light within them. And so I would talk to the voice. I said, okay, that you were told that you didn't have any light. Yeah, there was no light within you. I said, let's go look. And I imagined that we were descending into the darkness. And then I said, do you see any yet? They go, no. Well, how about now? And I went, how about now? They go, yeah, I see a dim orange light. And I'd say, well, I thought your masters told you that you didn't have any light within you. And he goes, yeah, they did. And they got furious. Every single one, when they found out they had that dim orange light they got furious at their commanders. And so what I found is that if I could walk them into the light and have somebody come pick them up, that voice was gone. So I'd talk that voice into, I'd say, well, do you see the brighter light yet? And if I could, I'd say, well, okay, go ahead and step in the light. And they go, no, the light will burn me. I said, no, it won't burn you. Go ahead and stick your hand in there. You're not going to get burned. They'd walk into the light. And once they did that, I'd say, okay, do you have anybody who's deceased? Do you have anybody you trust? They go, yeah, my grandmother. So I call your grandmother. So when the grandmother showed up, I said, go with her, because you can't go back now. They know that you've talked to me and you're not supposed to do that. They're going to send you to the pit. And that voice would then leave with the grandmother, and it would be gone. That voice would disappear. And there was one I did two like that, and then a third one showed up that wasn't there before. The guy was free of the voices. He said, I don't hear anything now. And then about 10 minutes later, here comes this third one, which was one of the supervisors who was mad. And they were mad that we got rid of those other two. And I'm like, where did that one come from? And he said, well, that's their master or something like that. But yeah, if you can walk them into the light and have somebody come pick them up, that voice is gone.
That's amazing, man. That is just amazing. That whole idea of their hierarchy and the way it's set up, the way it's almost like an administrative type, like a business almost, or
like our government,
military government. There you go. Really speaks a lot to the fucking systems we all, suffer under, and how they're so organized and structured. Just the actual opposite of nature to me, anyway. So. There was another question, and I had it highlighted, but I did some changes on the account here, and now I have to go back and find it. Oh, here we go. Nope, that wasn't it. I'm sorry, guys. I got to go back. Okay, this is Big Pine sailing again. Once recognizing the voices aren't yours and you confronted them and they're still going at you, most people would still consider you insane. What platforms do people have to talk about this? I keep dropping the link to your site there, Jerry, in the chat. So I'm sure it's a good starting point.
Well, Sherry and I started a voices group, and I think last I checked there was 800 people in there, Sherry.
Yeah, I don't know the count, but it's grown substantially. I keep getting requests I'm getting an awful lot of requests, but we've got three simple questions. They're not really personal. It's like, are you currently hearing voices? And we don't care if they are or they aren't. If they used to or whatever, they're in the right place. And then it's, I forget this. What do you think the voices are? And then they say what they think they are. A lot of them say they think they're their ancestors. And then the third question is, what do you hope to get out of this group? So that's all we ask. And we also say, if you don't answer all three questions, we can't approve you. Okay, because we want to make sure that, we're getting the people who should be in that group, and not just everybody. You know what I'm saying?
See, and this breaks
So
their
it's
isolation,
yeah,
because they're generally pretty isolated, but now they're talking to one another about their voices.
So this is a private group, and so that's why we go through this approval process. And what I'm getting is a lot of requests. The people aren't bothering; they're just hitting the request and hitting send, and then they have to be declined because they haven't answered any of the questions at all. So, I get a lot of those every day. I get 3 or 4 of them that are like that, and then within that, I'll get a bona fide request. So, but yeah, so we're not real active on there because we're busy doing other things, but we do check in from time to time and kind of just, read the conversations and see what kind of questions and what kind of answers people are giving. And people are actually comparing notes, which is a good thing. And then they'll come up with, well, what do we do about it? How do I fix this? These voices are driving me absolutely crazy. And if I happen to be on when one of those questions comes up, I always send them the That's a Lie program and Jerry's website and tell them, all of your answers are there. You just have to look, and it takes some time for sure. We've got frequently asked questions. We've got the video page. We've got articles in there. We've got the testimonies in there. So we've got everything that a person needs to start trying to help themselves.
And we got scores of videos in there.
Yeah, and Jerry also has a consulting service on there that is not free, but everything else we offer is free. So a person can go on there, and if they're diligent, that's the thing. You have to be diligent. This isn't an overnight thing. You can't. People have said, "Well, I tried the That's a Lie program and it didn't work." Well, how long were you doing it? Well, I did it for a few days. I did it for a week. Yeah, that's not how it works.
No, it's got to be consistent for a long period of time.
Yeah, real medicine doesn't work overnight. If you want to cure something that's wrong, I mean, if you want to just get rid of the pains and aches, yeah, they'll give you an opiate or something like that, and it'll dull your senses to where you don't feel that. But to cure something, yeah, I've tried to help a couple people just with, not anything like this, but just stress. And I always tell them, you have to get out into nature. Mm-hmm. You're isolating yourself it's bad enough there's no people around you and you're surrounded by these walls all the time and staring at the box.
Well, that's exactly what the voices tell them. Stay away from everybody. They're watching you. They're plotting against you. You can't trust anybody. Lock yourself in the room. They just want that person isolated by themselves with the voices alone and nobody else interfering. So that's the worst thing a schizophrenic can do is isolate themselves.
And like you said, you can't just go out into nature for a week and expect the results to, instantly feel better. It doesn't work that way.
No.
But if you do it every day for just 10 minutes a day and you go out there and you actually focus on nature and look at that. And, I talk to the trees. I love.
Yes, sir, Zach. I was unmuted to tell you, sir. My friend down the street said hello.
Yeah, I love talking to the trees.
And trees too.
Yeah, it helps. And there's some people that won't even try it. And you can't help someone if they're not going to take your advice and at least go try it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a whole huge step towards admitting it's something real that you're dealing with and not just what the doctors are telling you. So it definitely is huge.
Well, yeah, that's what's so bad about it is you got the psychiatric mafia saying, well, you're hallucinating, your brain is broken. The only thing we can do is drug you silly. And people are believing this because these people are doctors. There's no spiritual anything to it. Nothing.
The isolation is so horrible. I mean, just communication with each other, with these things. I mean, that's our friend. She said it a few times. It's mentioned a few times here in chat, and I've blown it off. Not blown it off. Sorry, guys. There's so much going on. I'm doing so many different things here. I've missed it and highlighted it and missed it twice. I've dropped it. So here it is. Vividness, 420. At 17:30 p.m. daily, she would have a round table with her voices and let them say whatever they wanted for as long as they needed to. But the deal was that then they had to stay totally quiet until the next day at that 17:30 round table. Fascinating. That's just amazing. Again, it kind of speaks to their regimen, their hierarchy, their need for things to be controlled and regimented, and
I
I'm
wouldn't
fixed.
even. I
surprised.
wouldn't
I'm
even.
surprised.
I couldn't even imagine that would work because they
No.
just won't let up. They don't
It
respect anybody's rules.
really, well,
No.
she says it's working for her.
Well, God bless her. That's the first time I've ever heard anything like that. I don't know about you guys. I mean, what do you think, Sherry and Anon?
Yeah, I think that, well, I'm not, if it's working for her, that's great. It's a shame that she has to even experience them at the round table, but if she's immune to what they're saying, then she's all
Well,
powerful.
from what I see, it's been years back, and it doesn't seem to be the issue it was. So again, there's so many things in chat I'm trying to keep up with on a couple of channels. So
Mhm. Yeah, I have found that they're tricksters, they're liars, they're cheats, they're manipulators, they're con artists, and they do it. Sometimes they do it in a way that you can see right off the bat. But if you can't, you'll get yourself in serious trouble. And what I have found is that the positive spirits, they come to you through feeling and a nudge, just a little nudge. They don't demand.
Intuition.
They don't demand anything. They love you whether you do the thing or not. They just love you whatever you do. So when you can get that through your head, then you can really tell the difference easily.
that still
It's-
quiet voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see another thing these things will do, and I've seen it with a number of patients, is they will pretend to be an abusive. Say a gal had a very abusive, nasty father, and he died, and she's like, oh yeah, great, he's gone, and then they will appear as the father because they know all the stuff that happened with that girl
Right.
and the father. And I've heard that a number of times where when the abusive person dies, the voices come back and go, oh, I'm not dead, I'm still here. And since they have access to the memory of what happened, only the victim and the deceased person would know what happened, but the voices know what happened, and they go, well, see, I'm your deceased father because I did this to you, and you did this, and I did it, and here's all this stuff that nobody else would know. So that was real devastating. I've seen that 3 times now. That's really devastating when that happens. They're evil. They're psychopaths. They're evil psychopaths. That's what they are.
We have
We have
question
another.
in chat. Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say from Natalie Renkla. This is mainly for Sherry. She says, you mentioned Reiki earlier. How often do you use Reiki, and are you certified in any other healing methods? I ask because I am also certified in Reiki, if that's the correct pronunciation.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yes, I'm certified, but I haven't practiced it for a number of years. So, but when I was practicing it, I was pretty successful.
Energy work, energy.
Yeah, what was the rest of the question?
of
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
How often did you use it?
Well, when I was using it almost every day. When I was learning it, I was using it absolutely every day, like sometimes 5 or 6 hours a day, trying to learn all of the symbols and the meanings and all of the understandings that go with it.
So that methodology, and we've talked about some of the confrontation, either using the love, using the comedy, using just some of these different techniques. Now, our friend Alan in chat, Alan Holman, who has been through some things very similar with his history. He's written a book dealing with mostly cancer and healing from cancer, but it speaks a lot to parasitic invaders that contribute to cancer. And we've had some different ideas expressed from different people on the show that, some of these parasitic invaders that inhabit your gut, your like literal, that whole gut feeling idea, these things control like your desires to eat certain things, your desires to just exhibit certain types of behavior that benefit them, making you fatter, making you sicker, making you more just degenerated. And I think that also is key to some of the things in the Bible, some of the books that were taken out of the Bible, talking about these same parasitic invaders, these spores, these molds, these funguses that can literally make a person do things against their own will. And so health, diet, changing that, working through ways of getting these things out, which there are lots of ways. Alan's book can help with that. I'll give you guys a link in a little while. But also, Alan says, in his opinion, the voices also represent unprocessed facts about your own life and your environment. And when you properly process these facts, the voices will disappear for good. So just throwing a lot at you guys, just kind of.
Well, they do
See
feed
your
on that
thoughts
stuff.
there.
They do feed on the stuff that you buried and you're not consciously aware of. And that's when you run into somebody you don't like. So they call it a negative identity. And it gets projected out onto the person who is irritating you, but it's something that's within you that is unsettled, that needs to be taken care of. So they will trigger those things, and that generates a ton of negative emotional energy. And anybody that you dislike, you have to have that trait in you to be able to see it. It's the buried stuff that's unconscious that they feed off of, and they keep triggering. And
Well, and the foods too. Excuse me for interrupting, Gary. The foods that you eat do change the chemical balance of your body. So that will actually change how you feel, how you think, and so how you think and how you feel kind of go together. Because if you think about that you're feeling bad, then you start to feel bad, and then you feel bad, then you think about. So it's kind of this vicious circle that these toxic foods will do. And so that contributes to the openness of the voices and the parasites.
And the voices are parasites. They're draining your energy. One of the things I saw working in the prison is that after the voice is attacked, the schizophrenics are drained. They're absolutely drained. They can't get out of bed. They can't do anything. They mope around. They don't have the energy, but they're not aware that there's a one-to-one correlation between the voices coming and their energy disappearing. And when you point that out, the voices get mad. They really, if they're going to blow up, they're going to blow up when you're telling the patient that they are parasites. That's the last thing they want the patient to know. That's the very last thing they want them to know.
And that's the thing that everybody needs to know is
That's
true.
exactly
So
right. That's exactly right. They
can't
have to know it.
Yeah, they can't heal themselves or do anything to help themselves until they know that these are separate entities.
And parasitic. If you had a leech on you, you wouldn't just sit there and look at it. You'd do something about it. So it's the same thing with the voices.
Yeah, I get your point. I'm sorry. Got to bring some levity to this because it's such a serious subject it's so dark. And
it is
for me. I'm not in the darkness anymore, and I don't ever intend to go there because I understand. I may not understand them, but I know what they are, and then I know that they're not me. So they don't belong with me. They don't even belong on Earth, as far as I'm concerned. They can just all go away to wherever they came from.
Right. Yeah, I agree there. Definitely.
Now, some people say that they are indigenous to planet Earth in the form of egregores, which, I think egregores are a real thing. And they, but it has to be a whole collective, like the last 2 years that we went through. That was a whole collective. And so the egregore developed, which is a mindset or a meme or a paradigm. So that's what the egregore does. And so when you have a big, huge collective group thinking one thing, and so the egregore creates it for you. So I think that's what happened, but I don't think an individual can do that. I could be wrong, but I think it has to be a whole group of thought. So there's that, and that is real. So we're dealing with that. And so while this egregore is creating the thoughts of the whole major group in the whole world, then the negative thoughts will come in because everybody's wide
And
open.
everybody's
So
in fear, everybody's in terror,
yeah.
everybody's locked
Right.
down, everybody's in isolation.
Yeah, so
it was fucking perfect breeding ground for these fucking
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
Or my French.
Yeah.
Now,
That-
Sherry,
Yeah.
Sherry, can I take you guys back when you were talking about where you were walking people through on
Sure.
like the demons going into the light and greeting like loved ones they're dead and not seeing them anymore, right?
Mhm.
I've also heard like the practice that like when you die that like these demons will emulate the light and try to distract you and take you off in a different direction, and some people
Absolutely.
are putting out that they shouldn't be looking for the, like when you die, don't go into the light or whatever, it's a trap. I'm just wondering, like, hearing like again both parts of the information on it, which is completely unknown to me, what your thoughts are, or is there a deception that could they emulate themselves as light, and how could they project that bright of a light to be it if they're that dark of an energy?
Now, I've heard that same thing from a few different sources. Um, but there's a book out. Sherry, who's those guys that at the institute? Um, they did the CDs,
Oh
and
yeah.
they would
Monroe
travel.
Institute, the Monroe Institute.
Yeah,
was
yeah,
the-
yeah, yeah.
No, it wasn't the Monroe Institute. It was I think it was the Institute of Psychiatry. I think in
No, it wasn't psychiatry anything.
no, he
This
was
guy,
he was in that group, or psychology maybe it was, or something, but I can go look it up. In fact,
I have the book there, but he teaches people how to travel out of their bodies. It might even be Monroe.
I think it
hang
is
on,
Monroe.
no, I know who you're
And the
talking about,
Hemisinker,
Jerry.
or is there somebody
I
else?
thought you were talking about I thought you were talking about that university guy that wrote the paper on the demons.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
No.
it was the Monroe Institute. I spent.
But I know the guy, Jerry. I met him at a conference.
Yeah. Well,
damn it.
he wrote all about, he left his body all the time. Every night he was going. And
Daniel Brinkley, is that the one?
no.
Okay,
No,
so
it's
the other guy.
Journeys Out
I
of the
know.
Body
Journeys
by
Out of the
Robert.
Body.
Yeah. Journeys Out of the Body.
by
Right.
Robert Monroe.
But yeah, so it was Monroe. So he goes step by step how to do it, where to go, how it happens, the different entities, and never did he mention, I don't think, Sherry, that there was something waiting to trap people. He talked about different belief systems, where he would rescue somebody, and then they were lost. He would start taking them somewhere, and then when they passed the belief system that they belonged to, they would vanish into that belief system. But
Yeah,
it
that
wa-
makes more sense. Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to deceive with the light vibration. Really, if you, how would you even emulate that to deceive with it?
I don't think the dark entities could handle the light.
I don't think so either. That would be my thing. How would they beam such an intense beam of
No,
light?
they
and
wouldn't. They want nothing to do with the light. Matter of
Right.
fact, like I was telling you, that the ones I were talking to during the time I was talking to them, they couldn't stand the light. They were afraid of the light. They were told that if they went anywhere near the light, they'd be burned or they would die. So
right,
whatever.
almost like a vampire in sunlight or something like that.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah,
that
yeah,
type
yeah.
of that makes sense to me. That, thank you for clarifying, because I've heard like the both different things, and yet again, I understand they use deception, but how can you deceive at a base core with something that the opposite of what you are. I mean, how could you can't? That's not something you could pull off
Yeah,
in
I
a
mean,
convincing manner to me. How would you convince that your love when you're hate or deceit through that? I don't think you can get through that base emotion or that vibration.
no, I don't think so
Sherry?
either. And yeah, I mean, I was going to say that you'll know, I would imagine you'll know by the vibration that's coming your way, by the frequency that's coming your way.
Mhm.
So, I mean, what I hear from people who have done near-death experiences, I've heard about the trap, and I want to consider that, but yeah,
None
I've
of
heard,
them reported it.
no, they didn't. But that what they reported was the feeling of pure love. Well,
Yeah.
you can't get that from the entities.
No, and none of them wanted to come back here.
They can't fake that.
Yeah.
So, but I've heard the stories from several different sources and from a couple of books that I read. I read one in particular was called, I think it's called Alien Interview, and it's of a nurse that communicated telepathically with an alien that was captured in the
Roswell.
Roswell thing.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That was very interesting, and the entity alluded to that the people that were here were trapped. They couldn't get out because of this dome thing that goes over the planet, and it keeps them from going out, right? So that makes a lot of sense to me. And I read that book, and it's like I've never read a book that had such an impact on me, but that was my first time being exposed to that kind of information. And you know, they can't verify that it's true, that it's a true story, it's a true transcript or whatever, but the guy tells the story of how he got the transcript, and it sounds believable to me. And
yeah, it did. Monroe doesn't mention anything like that, though. He, he talks about different levels. Where
he talks about some bad guys out there, some super bad guys.
Yeah,
out there.
yeah.
Right. Well, I did a lot of years of research in those areas as well, and that's something that definitely seemed to keep coming up quite often. Is a variety of intent, a variety of agendas, a variety of just different entities, and I think that speaks to some of these entities we're speaking about too. I don't think they all are sitting in the same building waiting to jump on our asses. I think they all come from a lot of different places, sources, agendas, what they're after, food, endless food. Some of them might be trying to hijack the system and use us over and over in some kind of soul recycling system. I mean, there's all kind of things that could and have been alluded to going on, including when you mentioned the dome. That was very interesting. What was the name of that book again? I would definitely like to read this.
Yeah, it's called Alien Interviews. I think I have a copy, I think, on my website, because it's got a free PDF.
Well, it's interesting because we
If
had a
not,
question.
I can send it to you.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. We had a question actually this morning from our listener, our viewer, Ian, who had popped a question at 5:30 this morning while we were doing our show. He says, my question for Jerry and guests, it says, we have people that channel entities, i.e. Basher of Ra and the Law of One. Are the voices or the bad guys that you all investigate coming from the same place as these entities? And are some of these entities bad and some good, like people? And I know you guys had touched on that a little bit earlier. Anon did, and then again just now, which is why I thought this would be a great time to drop this question in.
Well, there's some people who want to do that, and I've run into that, when I worked in the prison, worked in the ERs where they were trying to channel. And here comes this entity going, oh, yeah, I'm your guardian angel, or I'm Christ, or I'm, so they'd lie to them about who they were. And they'd be real nice to them for a while, and then they'd slowly turn on them. And then they'd show their real true colors. But, the Law of One, I think that struck me as valid. That I didn't get a weird feel from that. It was like, oh yeah. But I've seen it over and over and over again where you don't be playing with those Ouija boards. I can't tell you how many people have started hearing voices after playing with those Ouija boards. It's as bad, almost as bad as meth.
I've said it.
Don't mess with those things. They're
A
dangerous.
sister-in-law has had an entity attached to her since she was 13 years old from playing with Ouija boards.
No,
She
they
has a
are
name
very
for it.
dangerous.
Not sure how I shut mine up or got rid of mine from having played with the Ouija board, but again, I've said it many times here on the show and appearances I've made on local radio station that I can look back now, of course, with the 2020 hindsight, but I can look back and see that after having built and created and made our own Ouija board and doing all this other stuff with my ex-wife, that there was not that we were on necessarily an upward trajectory anyway, but there was a significant downward trend after we were playing with that Ouija board. And even just acknowledging that, I think, gave me a little bit more power and control, and seeing that really opened up a door and made me susceptible to a lot of things that I wouldn't have otherwise. And there's a good chance that I picked something up there. And it was just really weird to be able to look back and see that all the changes that I made in my life to become who I am now versus who I was then, and being able to see the trends. And again, I don't know what it was, but it was just really strange to look back and see that Ouija board is a pretty well defining moment on my landmarks of horrible decisions that I've made in my life.
Yeah, I've heard it over and over and over and over again throughout the years. They start playing with the Ouija board, talking to this thing, and then it moves into their head, and then it's talking to them into their head. They don't need the Ouija board anymore, and then they're gone. They're psychotic. They're psychotic as any schizophrenic, just from the Ouija board. So they're like you're saying, they're entities out there, all different kinds of entities. We're at a very low frequency here, and there's a lot of them floating around out there. The ones that cause us the trouble are the ones that drive schizophrenia. They're some of the worst.
Now, have you ever heard of a tulpa?
Tulpa, I don't think so.
It's I think this is from Tibet, maybe. The Tibetan monks. It's saying something about the Dalai Lama here, so I'm not sure. But it says that there are they call them tulpamancers, are people who, through extended bouts of concentration and visualization, produce a special kind of imaginary friend that they call a tulpa. Tulpas are understood to be distinct sentient beings with their own personalities, inclinations, and relative autonomy. So it's almost like, as a child, you make an imaginary friend, and eventually that imaginary friend leaves you. Now, did you really create another sentient life form and it just got sick of you and went off and had its own life? Or, yeah, this is something that, and it's old. This goes way back into their history. But they talk about imaginary beings that are created like when you're a child, because through intense bouts of concentration and visualization.
I
So
think the kids actually see those things, and they're real. They're not programmed to go, oh yeah, they're imaginary. They don't exist. They just see them and they go, oh yeah, that's I've been playing with this guy.
Right.
And that's probably because as children, when we first arrive, we're totally connected still.
Yeah.
We haven't been, the cord hasn't been cut yet.
Like I told you guys last time you were here, Jerry and Anon, when that dragon floated through that fan every night in my room when I was a baby and was looking through the crib and watching him float through the wall, it was real. There was no doubt that happened every night. And then, thank you, Anon, for giving Chinubis their name. I still have the tab for Chinubis open on my computer from the last appearance that broke my brain, friend. Anyway, but yeah, the validity of these things for children is like absolute. My son had a friend that played with him and everything was fine. His little play friend was great and he had a blast. This was a trailer we were renting, and it was fun until the kid couldn't play with my son's toys with him and couldn't play his video games with him and couldn't read his books for him. And then the kid wasn't happy anymore. And then the kid started making ugly faces that scared my son. And that's when we had our little intervention and used some of the old, what was the show? Sightings, techniques. I'm trying to remember the psychic with the big, thick black mustache, James something. Anyway, used his techniques and told the little kid to go to the light, and he left and never messed with my son again. So yeah, kids and their perception of these things that's there's the key. Kids
Yeah,
know
I
when
had
they
an
see, they
imaginary
know.
friend that I didn't know was imaginary until I was in my 30s when my mom said, "Oh, and your imaginary friend Steve." My whole life, Steve was very real and a real person, a young boy that lived next door that I grew up and played with until I was about 4. So for like a year and a half, I had lots of memories of me and Steve. I was Batman. I always had my Batman. It was a quilt. And then he had the small little one that was like more of a smaller towel that he wore around his shoulders because he was Robin. He didn't get the long cape like Batman. Batman had the long cape. And yeah, I mean, I have a lot of memories with this child, Steve, my best friend in Whiting. And then I come to find out that Steve never existed. I thought when I moved away, he just, stayed there. And I moved away, and that's why I never saw Steve again. I never, yeah.
Now, did he look just like a real person, or was he
Yeah.
more like a
He was,
ghost, or
no,
was he solid, or I mean,
I couldn't tell the difference. To me, he was a real boy.
wow.
Until my mom said, "Oh yeah, your imaginary friend Steve." I was like, "What are you talking about imaginary? Steve was real." And she was like, "No, he wasn't. We heard you talk to him a lot, but there was no Steve."
That's
She thought I was
wild.
talking about the $6 man. That's what I called Steve Austin. The $6 million man, I would call him the $6 man. And he was one of my favorite TV shows, so they thought I was talking to him. But no, I remember Steve as a little boy that lived right next door.
Wow.
Our friend Vivian Miss 420 asked, does Jerry know a woman named Olga Runciman? Runciman, Runciman. She's
Holy
working
cow.
with voice healers internationally, British, but grew up in Denmark. Meeting her sparked me to finding the courage to face my own voices, she says. So, do you
Thank
know
you.
this person?
Thank you, Vivid, for
No.
re-asking that. I did see that you'd asked it earlier in chat, and I kept trying to scroll up to find
I
it.
know. I kept trying to
Scroll
go
up
find it too, Viv. I really did, but there's so many questions, guys. We're trying. Go ahead, Jerry. I'll look her up too, real quick.
No, I don't know of her.
I will definitely look her work up, though. Thank you, Vivid. There's somebody in chat you may or may not know. You may have heard of this guy. James True's in chat. What's up, brother? Miss you, friend. We need to talk.
Yes, we do.
He's saying they mimic other people, but if you ask them who they are, they will always tell the truth. Even Jerry's work confirms this. He also mentions the trash can entity, the tulpa you confronted in your book. That's insane. That's crazy.
Well, that's the I had for years. I was denying, while I was working with these guys and the stuff they were telling me. I'm like, oh well, they exist in their head. They can't come out of their heads. But I found that there were ways to disrupt the patterns that they were running, and that if you disrupted those patterns, they would start weakening. So some of these guys, and also I saw they were liars, and I didn't have a program as specific as Sherry's, but I would tell them that they're liars. You can't believe anything they say. You can't trust anything they say. So once you start just disrupting these patterns that they run, they start losing ground. And these schizophrenic prisoners were getting better. And uh, you know, I still wasn't. I was still in denial. I mean, my denial system was shot to hell. It was like, it had been bombed or something. It's just barely standing, ready to collapse. And then one day, one guy who was doing pretty good, he comes to my office and he goes, without an appointment in the prison, and he goes, the voices want to talk to you. And I'm like, what? They want to talk to me personally? In like 15, 20 years, that had never happened. They always talked through the patient. The patient would say, well, they're saying this, or say they're saying that, or this is what they're saying now, or this is what they're doing now. It was never a direct person to person thing. So I'm like, come on in, sit down. And I said, well, what do they have to say? And these words came out of his mouth. It was, you have no right to interfere with our way of life. And I was like, boom. I was like, our way of life. And the prisoner's going, that's not me. I didn't say that. That was them who said that. And then I responded with, well, tell them this. And he said, I don't need to. They can hear what you're saying. They can see what you're doing. So, it's like they're looking through his eyes and listening through his ears, or after he left, I was just stunned. I just was, I couldn't work the rest of the day. It was like, that was it. My denial system completely collapsed. So, I got some warnings from some of the prisoners prior to that, like, what you're doing is dangerous, or they really don't like what you're doing, or they're getting mad at you. And I'm like, well, so what? They're stuck in your head, not mine. I didn't tell them that, but they can't come out. But then I found out that they could. And it was one time where I was bringing in a book by a shaman, Miguel Ruiz, who he was talking about them being energy parasites also. And that's what I was seeing. So I brought that in to talk to one patient that I was working with extensively, and I wanted to know what his thoughts were on Ruiz pointing out that these things were parasites, because I noticed they were taking the energy of these people. They were draining them. I don't know how they did it, but they were doing it. It was consistent. There was a one-to-one correlation between the voices showing up and their energy levels disappearing. And there were some other things that happened that kind of proved that's what was going on. But when I started reading the part about the voices being parasites, this guy turned into a zombie. He just was staring at me with this weird look. And all of a sudden, the walls in my office started crackling. It sounded just like an arc welder. It was like crack, 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 crack. And I'm looking, and I didn't see anything. I didn't smell anything, but boy, it was loud. And it went up the right side of the office, crackling all the way up the wall. And I turned to him and I said, do you hear that? And he's just staring at me with this zombie-like stare. And I'm like going, he's going to attack me. And I pushed my chair against the wall just in case he came so I could kick him back. And then I'm looking and splitting my attention between him and this crackling. So it crackled over his head, across the office wall and near the ceiling. And then it came down the left-hand wall, crackling toward me. And I'm like, okay, what's this thing going to do? And I jumped into this Rubbermaid trash can in my left, and I looked in there, and there's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's not even paper in there, because the inmate porter had cleaned it the night before. And then it just vanished. It just disappeared. And he gets up and he goes, I gotta leave. And he shuffles out of the office. And I'm like, yeah, get the hell out of here. Go. Go. And it took me 2-3 months, I think, before I had the guts to call him back in. And finally I called him in, and he looked good. He said, well, I told him, I said, I thought you'd be destroyed. And he said, no, I was doing some of the stuff you said, and I'm holding my ground. And I asked him, you remember the last time you were in here, that crackling, that electrical crackling? I said, did you hear that? And he goes, yeah, I heard it, but I was surprised you did, meaning me. And I said, yeah. I said, what the hell was that? And he said, that was them. I said, the voices? He goes, yeah, that was them. And I said, well, what were they doing? He goes, they were trying to scare you off. I said, well, they did a damn good job of it. And I then asked him, I said, what were you thinking when you walked out the door? You looked like a zombie. I said, what were the voices telling you? He said, they were telling me to go get a shank and stick it in your gut. And I'm like, I'm thinking he wouldn't do that. I worked with him for 6 months. He's getting better. He's a lot better than he was. And I said, well, why didn't you do that? And he said, I couldn't find one. I went, oh.
Lucky man.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been protected. I think I have a pretty good guardian angel because I've never been hurt by one of these guys, and a number of the staff that I've worked with have been.
We have another question from chat. I forget who asked this one. Okay, Call for Zero asked. He gets real specific, more or less issues near ley lines, but I was just gonna state it as geographical location. Have you noticed like an abundance of schizophrenic come from certain areas where certain areas have like close to none?
That relates back to the trauma again. It's where there's trauma, there's a high incidence of schizophrenia. Where like war, uh, mental, physical, sexual abuse. It seldom just springs up out of nowhere. There's usually something. You look into their backgrounds. Some of these criminally insane prisoners I worked with, I didn't want to know what they did, but there are times I felt I needed to, and I'd go look in their case record, and boy, they were burned, they were tortured, they were locked in closets. What had happened to them was just horrible. The second biggest cause I saw was meth, amphetamine. I've seen more prisoners go insane on methamphetamine than any other drug. Some cocaine, but boy, meth was the one. They start seeing the shadow people, they start hearing voices, and then they think, oh yeah, I'm just hallucinating because of the meth, and it goes away. And then the voices come, and then they go away, and they come, and they go, and then one day they don't, and they stay, and they got them for life. They're stuck, and they don't go away. And then they end up fighting for their sanity and their lives. Meth is awful stuff. It's the devil. The prisoners called it the devil's drug.
Do you think is it a chemical compound, you think, from the actual methamphetamine?
Now, I think it's what it does is it speeds them up. So it throws them into a higher frequency because they start seeing these shadow people, which they don't see when they're, sober, and then they start hearing the voices. So what you're talking about is a higher frequency than what we normally function at. We're low frequency in physical reality.
It's that higher frequency that's going to be slightly out of tune because it's all this dirty shit that they make it with. But then it's this prolonged exposure to these witching hours. I'm still a little bit stuck in my brain on this idea of like the sundowners as it relates to schizophrenia.
Yeah, the voices get louder after sunset. As soon as the sun sets, they start acting up. They get louder. And it's the same thing with the geriatric patients. They actually had a name for it. They call it sundowner syndrome. Yeah, they can't explain it. They don't know what causes it. But boy, I'll tell you, at night when that sun goes down, there's a lot of trouble in those geriatric centers.
So if you're up for like 4 or 5 days because you're on this big meth binge and you're not getting that psychological break, the emotional break that comes with becoming unconscious for a few hours and just sleeping, and you deal with that 3 a.m. witching hour, here's where it's the worst, and then we just carry that on right through to the next day, and then we compound that with the next 3 a.m. witching hour, and you're just going to stay up through that one too, and you're just going to carry all this shit with you for 4 or 5 days. And I can really see how, again, being up through that witching hour and not getting the sleep to bring you down and disconnect would kind of make that worse.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous drug.
James True in chat was asking to speak on how, like, when there's a group of people that are doing meth together, how they will admit to all seeing the same beings, the shadow beings out there. It's not like one sees them and the rest of them don't. Like, there's been multiple accounts of where people have claimed to both seen, or groups of people seen the same.
Matter of fact, I had one prisoner that was telling me he ran an experiment with his buddy, and they were wondering whether they saw them individually or they would both see them together. So they were injecting meth, and they went out to one of the Indian reservations south of Tucson, out to the Sells Indian Reservation on one of these dirt, back dirt roads. And one of them injected the meth, and the other one didn't. So, the guy who injected started seeing the shadow people. These are like three-dimensional humanoid shadows. Mostly they don't have eyes. And if you do see the eyes, you're in much worse shape than if you don't. I actually use that as a diagnostic tool. But yeah, the guy who injected up, he saw it. He started seeing them, and he asked the other guy, "Well, do you see that one over there by the tree?" And he goes, "No, I don't see it." "How about the other one over there by the cactus? You see him?" "No, I don't see it." So they determined that the guy who had injected the meth um, was actually seeing them, and the other guy who hadn't wasn't. So the other guy, and he shot up with the meth too, and then they were comparing notes, and they go, "Do you see the one over yonder?" "Yeah, I see him. What's he doing?" "Well, he's doing this." So yeah, they were seeing the same ones. But what's strange, and I don't know what's with this either, because most people who saw them, soon as they start moving toward them, they run, they get out of there. So these two guys were so fascinated with watching and comparing notes that these things, they move in once they notice that they're being watched. They start moving in on the person who sees them. And I don't know what happens if they get there. But most people run away. But these guys locked themselves in the truck. They saw that they were being surrounded by shadow people. After comparing notes, they looked around and they're completely surrounded by these things, and they're moving in on them. So they locked themselves in the truck, and they're watching them from inside the truck. And the fella said, when a bunch of them jumped in the truck, and he said the truck recoiled. It was like a big boulder fell into the back of the truck. And that got me alarmed, because I didn't think they could affect physical reality. But if they could make that truck jump like a giant boulder being thrown in there, then they can. And that got me a little nervous. And I asked him, "Well, what'd you do?" He said, "Well, we drove out of there like crazy. We almost wrecked the truck getting out of there." And I said, "Did they follow you?" And he said, "No." But one thing consistent that all the prisoners said was that when they noticed them and they started watching them, they started moving toward them. They started coming at them, and most of them ran before they could get there. I did talk to one lady who she felt one walk through her, and she could feel it walk through her, but it didn't stay with her. Uh, I've never heard them hurting anybody. They just scare the bejesus out of you. They show up in your bedroom. They walk through walls. They walk across your bedroom. You know they'll sit there and they'll watch you. The Native Americans saw them. They called them the Watchers. So I don't know what they are. They don't seem to be good things. They don't help anybody. They just scare the hell out of them.
Have you ever cross-referenced schizophrenics with their blood types? Is there a certain blood
No,
type?
there's nothing to that. There's nothing to the urine. There's nothing to genetics. There's nothing to a chemical brain imbalance. This is a spiritual battle. These are dark forces who've moved in and are trying to take control of that person. And they hate the 23rd Psalm. I mean, it's like burning them with a blowtorch when that's repeated. They hate the Bible. They hate preachers. They hate anybody who's trying to help the victim. They hate the mothers. They hate the parents. They hate the girlfriends. They're telling them, they're plotting behind your back. They want to isolate them and have them totally to themselves. Anybody trying to help them is an enemy.
They especially hate children.
Oh yeah, they especially hate children. So it always worried me when I got one in the ER, schizophrenic mother. Some of the biggest, nastiest battles I've seen were between mothers and that maternal instinct and the voices telling them to hurt their kids.
Oh, wow, no doubt.
Yeah, they're huge battles.
Somebody just kind of broke my brain a bit in chat with a question that really, I think, will shake up the panel a bit as well, because it's a topic we mention and speak of quite often in other show discussions. What's up in chat? Question. Do any of these people having these experiences have unique blood types? Is that something you've seen? A consensus of RH
I just
positive or
asked that
negative? Or?
No,
No. Damn.
no, there's no physiological cause other than meth. You know, this is a spiritual battle. These are spiritual entities. And psychiatry doesn't believe in any of that crap. You know, they brainwash these guys for what, 4, 5, 6 years, and they come out of there
Right,
believing
absolutely.
everything they're told.
Absolutely.
They're totally brainwashed.
Well, it's just over time, it seems to be something that has come up in relation to, maybe more like psychically aware people, more people who are in touch with the other, if you will. So that maybe they would be then more available to these entities, maybe, or more, maybe they're actually less available to them. Maybe they have more ability to keep them at bay. So maybe that's why it's not a
Well, the positive
factor.
spiritual people, they don't like. They'll stay away from. You know,
Right,
if they
absolutely.
can bring down a preacher, boy, that's like bullseye. That's like
There's
10
no doubt
trophies for them.
that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. But yeah,
You
there's
see,
no physiological anything to it. They don't have anything to show that there's any physiological cause. But
Right.
their whole business, the psychiatric mafia and the drug companies, their whole business revolves around this lie that there's some physiological chemical cause. You know, their whole profit margin depends on their lying to people and getting them to believe that there's something physical wrong. No.
You know, earlier on in the conversation where Sherry was talking about the black smoke and what I had seen from illuminated fog, that could be when they're entering the physical realm of around time and matter. That might be what happens when they cross over into our realm. That's when you start to see like the black smoke or the fog or the cloud type of thing. That's a conjecture I'm putting forth. I don't know how you feel on that, Sherry.
well, yeah, you make a good point. And the thought crossed my mind. I wonder if they eventually evolve into the shadow people, but then I cross that out as, no, it's probably not right because the shadow people don't hurt people, from what Jerry says.
Yeah, they just scare the hell out of them.
Jerry, the
Oh,
one thing I
go
wanted to
ahead.
point out is that with this particular group of people, you have an unusual group in the chat room. I think they're asking for the blood types, not in a pharmaceutical way or in a way of treating, which we would consider mistreating. This group of people is looking more like your blood types have antennas, just like long hair is proven to be an antenna, and you can pick up different frequencies. And when you're talking about different like entities riding the waves, like it was discussed earlier in the conversation of having to jump onto a bandwidth and water or different static noise, and that if there is a blood type or a group that might be predisposed to it in the way from a antenna type of way, as opposed to not treating it chemically. They're your group here, and they're asking the question. They're asking it entirely different than should this be treated out, or is there a treatment for it? It's more of a question for like, has there been? We know that there's been nobody that's been born blind has ever had schizophrenia.
Yeah, I heard that.
So that's like a filter away for it maybe to enter or attack in an antenna. I don't have the right word.
No, it was hard for me to get it out too, Cammy. It's hard.
Well,
The
These
conduit,
terms and concepts. There you
the
go.
conduit is the word.
Well, you know what I think. The way I visualize it is they're like sharks. They can smell blood. They can smell the negative emotional energy, and they move in on that.
Right, with the trauma.
Yeah, with the trauma and the negative thinking and the that kind of stuff. But as far as it's not a physical thing.
No, I understand what you're saying. I think I do anyway. It's the first time I've ever thought about it that way, that we are energy beings, and so our blood has obviously is filled with energy. It runs by energy. So
this is much like picking up signals, like tuning into a radio station, and maybe people can tune into different signals differently. So yeah, it's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah. So how would you know what type you have?
Well, you can, I mean, you can blood type and do family histories on blood types and learn a lot on that, or any type of, I imagine, again, the information can be out there. And you'll have little differences, like the Rh negatives having more copper versus Rh positive more iron, and again, different things that would handle how you handle electricity and that. So I think almost in the chat room when they were doing blood types and they kept on going Rh positive and negative, they were looking more in a battery. We have a very, very nerdy chat room here. So they're looking at the body as a working function electromagnetic part of this realm that's
Yeah,
incorporated in it. Like you read your heartbeat with an EKG, everything is impulses, like you're saying, and they're attracted to the impulse they get when you're traumatized in a long trauma state. So that's what attracts them, basically like flame, flies to a torch. Or
Yeah.
Well,
I
albeit
don't think you're going to find anything physical that.
so you're saying those two don't connect. So we're just seeing if there is a connection, if you see any antenna there.
it
What's
took me a
strange?
minute. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oops, no, keep on going, because
Well, the thing
I could be
is,
doing it
I
wrong.
saw a question way earlier that kept nagging, so I went back all the way in the chat and found it. Alan Holman had talked earlier about Dr. Joel Wallach saying most mental health issues can be caused by deficiencies of specific minerals. So that kind of, again, speaks to that frequency that can be like, well, the way the drugs that they give these people with their,
that is to some extent true. We're working in the ER. We had to have them
doorway.
medically cleared before we'd look at them, because there's a number of different medical conditions that can mimic schizophrenia.
There you go.
What was it?
Well, a tumor.
Yeast infection, a tumor,
right?
Certain medicines. There are a number of physical things that can mimic schizophrenia, but once those are cleared up, it goes.
Now, there's a question in chat by Big Pine Sailing. They asked, do you think these entities were human at one point?
I think some of them were, the bad ones. Especially when we got rid of them and had them, their grandmother showed up, or in some cases it was like an animal that showed up, a horse or something, that they went with the horse or the dog, but mostly it was human. So I think the vast majority of them were, bad humans that were taken over by these things. But I think some of them were just not. They never lived on this planet.
Like you were saying, there's different steps in their organization.
Yeah, there's different levels.
Yeah, maybe that's why some of the people who are joining the Hearing Voices group are saying that they think the voices are their ancestors.
Yeah, could be. The Indians would, they'd speak to their ancestors all the time. But, the difference is the intent, like you said, Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
Their ancestors would not intend their ill will, would not intend ill will toward them.
And James True will tell you their ancestors' bones were literally in the ground in this place held sacred so they could access those ancestors through those vibratory bones being there in the ground. That's why they were held sacred. There's a better chance of them actually being able to hear their ancestors.
Oh, absolutely. Well, what's her name? Michelle, who's doing the PhD paper.
Michelle DeVries.
Michelle DeVries. Yeah, she's a really fascinating lady. She's working on a PhD to prove that the entities are real, and so she relies on her. She continues to say, well, my ancestors said this, my ancestors said that, and I get the impression she's talking about her long ago ancestors. So, and they give her some really sound advice, so I mean, yeah, so I think that's absolutely what happens sometimes.
Yeah, and the Native Americans are always they're always talking
you beat
to
me
their
to
ancestors.
it, Jerry. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
It's in the blood.
Yeah, and see, so the psychiatry, we go, oh yeah, they're crazy, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, best not to see a psychiatrist, and if you do happen to run across one, don't tell them you're hearing anybody.
Yeah, you do that, you're going to end up on a drug. You walk into a psychiatrist's office, you're going to come out with some kind of drug that's not good for you.
That's great advice, Sherry. It's the first thing I'm going to tell them when I meet them. Hey, Doc, nice to meet you. I am not hearing any voices.
But you'd be surprised that, you know, at the state hospital, they were very leery of me asking them questions about their voices because they were afraid I'd turn them in to the psychiatrist and he would drug them silly. So that was one of the biggest obstacles I faced throughout my career, is getting them to trust me that I wasn't going to turn them into psychiatry unless I thought they were imminently dangerous. And I let them know that from the start. I said, if you can't control yourself, I'm going to have to turn you in. But otherwise, whatever you tell me is between you and I.
Man,
Yeah,
that's
they did not want psychiatry knowing that they were hearing voices, because that would just get them a different drug or a higher dose of the same drug until they were drooling.
that's horrible.
Well, that's all they know.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care what happens to us.
No, you know, most of them, they spend 15 minutes talking to the patient and, you know, hey, you doing okay? Hearing voices? No. Okay, well, see you next month.
The analytical psychologists put the shaman out of business, huh?
Shaman were doing a better job.
Hmm.
You want to tell them some of your experiences when you were hospitalized?
Yeah,
What
I
was
mean,
what's that like?
boy, it's a. I mean, I was fortunate, so I still had health insurance, so I was able to kind of go to a. I didn't have to go to a state institution, but I almost ended up there. I mean, it's part hell, part heaven, I would say. I mean, there's aspects of it that are terrifying. You feel like you're a prisoner. They throw all different types of pills and drugs at you to see which one will work, and they give you different combinations. They increase and decrease the dosage. I mean, you're just like a guinea pig. They're saying, okay, take this one now, take that one now. That didn't work. Next day they give you something different.
Yep.
And of course, you're counting all these side effects, being all these different drugs that they're prescribing you. I mean, I remember sometimes being super dry mouth. A couple of days, I don't remember a thing. I remember I would turn my head sometimes, and the scene would take a while to catch up. It would like shift over to catch up to where I was actually looking. I turn my head again, and the scene would like shift over. So it was almost like time dilation would be occurring with those stuff. And the drugs didn't do anything. I mean, it wasn't allowing me to address the issues at hand or counter the voices. It was just kind of making me unconnected to the outside world. But there was still stuff going on in the inside world that the drugs did not allow you to address. And you're in there with a lot of other patients too who are being diagnosed. Some people are coming off of drug addictions. And I remember there was like 3 or 4 wings. They had the wing for those coming off chemical dependency, and oftentimes they would start out there, and then they would end over at the wing for those with mental illness. And what we talk about with these entities, how they want you to isolate. They tell you how worthless you are. I remember when I was in the psychiatric hospital, there was a young lady there. She had attempted suicide. I guess she had a bad breakup with her boyfriend or something like that. And she kind of had a group of people over there. But I remember she invited me over to just come join them in the group because they were just hanging out and playing some games. And I was like shocked. Oh my gosh, somebody actually wants me to be with them. I'm valued enough that this group is inviting me over to join them. Because that's exactly the opposite of what these voices would tell you. Because they're trying to convince you you're so worthless. You have no right to exist. You're insignificant. And then to have a total stranger kind of express some greeting to bring you over, it threw me. I guess I'm just like, wow. I guess I have some worth. They're inviting me over. I mean, I was shocked that I actually had somebody that wouldn't be my friend in there. It's that strange what these voices try and do to you to make you totally devalue yourself.
And what would, if a psychiatrist came up to you and said you were hallucinating, what would you respond to him?
Well, I know I classify the hallucinations as different. If I was hearing, you have auditory hallucinations, you have visual hallucinations. I would tell them these aren't hallucinations. I took in college. I did take psychology courses. I took general psychology, abnormal psychology, comparative psychology. So I was very aware of DSM and stuff. But before I started having these experiences, and then I get out of college, and these things happen within a year or two of being out of college. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I was taught in my training, but it's very different. I said, this is almost like a possession or self-exorcism you're going through, having to confront these entities and these thoughts and these voices, what they're trying to get you to do. I mean, there were times where my arms and legs were moving, and I remember it wasn't me moving them. It wasn't my thoughts. It's like my psyche was being pushed to the side, or my personality. Something else was in there trying to kind of take control over me. I remember one time in the psychiatric hospital, I was walking, and I would walk into a wall. And after I walked into the wall, I would keep moving like I'm walking against this wall. And I started laughing because I remember thinking how stupid this must look. But I couldn't find the thought to just turn my body to go in a different direction. But that might have been just my mind being so overwhelmed, or the entity or entities kind of trying to take over the body to some degree. I do remember in the hospital, the doors are always open. There's actually no doors on a lot of the rooms, because the nurses and doctors have to make the rounds. They're always keeping an eye on you, making sure that nobody commits suicide on their watch. I remember they kept asking me what my name was throughout every like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. It was starting to drive me nuts. It's like, you have the information on the clipboard. Why don't you just look on the clipboard? Why do you keep asking what my name is? Can't you remember it? And it dawned on me later on, they weren't asking my name because they forgot what it was. They were asking my name to see if I knew who I was. So that was kind of interesting, part of their diagnosis process. And I think there was group therapy, and you really met with the psychiatrist. It wasn't that long each day. It might have been every other day. What I remember, it might have been 20 minutes at a time, or wasn't that long at all. But I remember I did not have a very good relationship with the psychiatrist they assigned me to in the psychiatric hospital. And remember, other patients in group therapy were starting to complain about this one psychiatrist as well. And the nurses were like, no, you got to trust him. You got to trust him. He knows what he's doing. There was something not right there going on. It was almost like it was more manipulation than compassion going on. Like very, very dogmatic. I remember I was getting a little angry, and I'm like, okay, he's supposedly trying to help me, but it's not working. I mean, he wasn't helping me. I will say this: some of the counseling that I got out after being released from psychiatric hospital definitely helped more so. There's just more compassion involved. And I remember one time they brought in this one patient. He was super psychotic. He was screaming and howling all night long. They had to strap him to a board, I think, in the bed to keep him there 24 hours, and just yelling constantly nonstop. I don't think anybody got sleep that night, the nurses or the other patients. I mean, you're in a fog there almost half the time because you're not sleeping well. Sometimes you've got the drugs that you're trying to deal with, and then you've got the mental illness or whatever, or the affective schizophrenic diagnosis that you're dealing with that's going on in your head at the same time. I mean, your brain is on overload. I'll say that much. It's like everything's happening at once, and you're trying to just kind of gain sense of reality. And I'm definitely very, very tired. I mean, I felt exhausted because like all these attacks that I was going through and trying to deal with. And then, of course, after you get out of the psychiatric hospital, you have to deal with the stigma of having been in there. And this is back in the 1990s, early 1990s. But that's what I can talk about today, because this was over 30 years ago. It's long gone, long in the past for me. So I'm established enough that it doesn't really matter anymore. So hopefully describing some of these experiences will help your listeners to realize that this truly is a spiritual battle, as Sherry said. And if you look at it as a spiritual battle, that gives you hope that you can beat it, that you can win it. It's not a lifelong sentence. It's going to take some work. You got to try different tools to deal with these entities or voices or whatever they are. And there's definitely various religious perspectives on this stuff. I mean, Gnosticism gets into some of this stuff. Even some of the Orthodox religions talk about some of this stuff. But I think if you treat it as a genuine, authentic spiritual battle, you have a higher probability of success of getting yourself back.
Yeah, I agree. That as you were talking about the psychiatrist, this one's tale. This is. I mean, there's some strange stuff happened at the state hospital. They didn't have the best psychiatrist in the world there. And there was one in another unit that the guy dressed like Sigmund Freud. He smoked a pipe like Sigmund Freud. He wore a suit like Sigmund Freud, and he walked around, acted like he was Sigmund Freud. And another psych that I worked with, he introduced me to this guy one day, and then one day he said, "Hey, he called me up. He said, you got to come over here and see this." So what had happened? One of the patients that was a patient of Mr. Freud had somehow made it from the third floor at like 3 a.m, past 3 attendant stations, somehow broke into Dr. Freud's office, got up on his desk and took a shit right in the middle of his desk and shaped it into a pipe and then escaped the hospital, and they never found him again.
Wow.
That was his way to get back at this guy. But the psychiatrists weren't real popular. One of the first things I noticed is that they were being beat up at a rate that was much higher than any other staff, higher than the nurses, higher than psychologists, higher. It was equivalent to that of an attendant who would, the attendants are with them all the time, 24 hours a day. But here's psychiatrists getting beat up, constantly by these patients, and they're only spending 15, 20 minutes with them every couple of weeks, maybe. I'm like, what's going on here? So, they weren't real popular with the patients. And the other thing that was real interesting is, schizophrenics have a suicide rate 3 to 5 times higher than that of the general population. But psychiatrists have one that matches it. It's virtually the same. These are the people who are running our mental health system. They have a suicide rate equivalent to that of schizophrenics, which is one of the most devastating mental illnesses out there.
I'm sorry, but aren't those like the last people you want in charge of really anything?
Right. Nothing screams competence like a super high suicide rate.
Wow.
I know, Anon, you got to get going here really soon. I did want to make it a point to let you know that you can rest assured you have indeed helped people, actual people here in chat, I'm sure.
Absolutely, guys. It's been amazing.
Even me, I don't think I've ever had to deal with any of these entities specifically in such a way that you have, like in such a direct manner.
See, I have to hand it to these guys because it takes a lot of courage to speak publicly out in the open about this stuff when, there's psychiatry going, yeah, you're mentally ill, man. Yeah, you got a lifelong sentence. Your brain is broken. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to get up there and speak publicly and say, this is what's really happening, dudes. It's nothing like what the psychiatric mafia is telling you. This is very different. This is a spiritual battle. This is not a broken brain. I mean, Anon's an engineer. He's a friggin' mechanical engineer.
We know what
it was epic when he said earlier he went from a mathematician to a mystic. That was epic. I love it.
A mad person to a mystic.
Yeah, and Sherry's an engineer too. I mean, these are logical thinkers. They think a lot more logically than I do. It takes a lot of guts to get up and speak out and tell the truth.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for the feedback on that. I mean, I had that diagnosis of affective schizophrenic disorder back in 1990. Does that mean, okay, I still am that way?
You never were.
Later.
It's a made-up diagnosis. I mean, there's no test to prove it. There's no. They just, like I told you, that whole DSM. It's all made up. It's all a big fairy tale. They break up these normal classes of behaviors that people experience, and they give them a number for the insurance code, and then they diagnose you with these things. I mean, it's the biggest sham in the universe.
But don't you think they know it? That they know it. That
they know
fucking
it.
delusional.
They know it.
So they're not delusional.
Speaks to that suicide rate.
Right, exactly. It surely does.
It also is, you were going through some things, and definitely, and as were you, Sherry. And it's possible that it was part of a growth thing. Our friend Sherry Ives in chat put something in that kind of really speaks to this. She said, I have friends who worked at Pilgrim State Psychiatric Center for 30 years. They told me that everyone inside was just waking up and having Kundalini experiences. Nobody was ill. So in other words, these are people who were seeing a whole lot more about the world around them. So of course it looks like insanity to most normal people that are not seeing what's going on around them.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's a real wake up call.
And
it's a battle for your soul, is what it is.
Right.
It is. And the thing to remember, the thing that everybody needs to remember is how much of the universe we actually see with our eyes. It's very, very tiny. It's less than 1%. So it's less than 1%. The rest of existence, you can't see it. Well, not everybody can. Most people can't see it.
I think we're not supposed to see it.
Yeah. I agree with you there. And the thing is, Anon, you and I have our feet in both sides. We have the logical and the spiritual. And we didn't get the spiritual until we went through this attack. So in that sense, it turns out to be a good thing. I think that there's something to the idea that some of the dark entities that come in and cause so much trouble to people, when it wakes them up, when it wakes them up, it's maybe they're here to do that for us or to us. Maybe that's not their purpose. Maybe they don't think that's their purpose, but we could look at it as their purpose.
Well, if you come out of it, it's certainly going to change your life. You won't doubt that there are spirits out there and evil spirits out there.
And
You'll know it.
You won't fear death anymore. When you know that you don't have to worry about it because you are a spiritual being, then you don't have to fear death. And so they can't threaten you. Nobody can threaten you with that kind of fear because you don't have it. So that was one of the benefits that I got from this whole experience.
Sherry, you're right on. Good points on that, because we can only put forth our observations. It's our interpretations that can be tough. Like these negative entities, we can call them archons or demons or whatever else. But okay, are they putting here to torment and torture us, or are they put on us to train us, to teach us? Are they initiation tests that we have to pass in order to get to a certain point to wake our soul or develop our soul to a higher level of consciousness?
That speaks to how thoroughly we were brainwashed in the wrong direction. I mean, if we're that gone, it's going to take the kind of treatment that they gave us to wake us up.
Well, keep in mind that they are parasites. They are feeding off you. They do the same thing we do to milk cows. You go out, you eat food, you generate energy and emotion, and they come and they suck it off. That just goes over and over and over again. They'll drain you to death if they can do it.
And when you've had enough, when you get to the point of where you've had enough, then you wake up, or you die.
Or you die, or you kill yourself.
Yeah.
It's a win or lose situation, unfortunately. Yeah. I know when I went through that portal after merging with that, I'll call it the benevolent entity. That was like the white-faced mass. It was beautiful, sheer beauty with that entity. And when I woke up the next day, I lost the fear of death, because it's like, as I said, my final torment from these parasites and the gaslighting was telling me that God doesn't exist. God doesn't exist. Give it up. He or she's just a fairy tale. And then I have this vision. It's like, wait a second. It means there is something beyond this material realm. It does it. It takes away the fear of death. I don't exactly want to die prematurely or a painful death, but I'm not afraid when it comes in its due time.
Yeah, and of course, you guys were talking about doing out-of-body experiences. I've had several out-of-body experiences. Some were really profound, and other ones were really, really scary. Kind of a Bob Monroe type of scary, when he encountered those nasty entities. So
are you doing the out-of-body experiences deliberately, Sherry, through meditative practice, or did they
no,
just randomly?
No, I started doing them deliberately much later in life, but they actually started by accident when I was going through my journey from age 3 to 6.5. During the sessions, I to avoid the pain, I guess, myself just snapped out of me, and I ended up in a very, very pleasant place. So yeah, so I think that's how I survived the whole thing and turned out to be, curable at some point in my life.
Well, I'm impressed as hell. Thank you so much for coming to hang out. I'm really, all three of you are just fucking mind
superheroes, truly.
Yeah, absolutely. Real life fucking superheroes.
I'm humbled by your comments. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
me too.
Yeah,
I just
just the
appreciate it.
bravery alone. I mean, saying what I was doing after the last show, that was so scary for me to say that out loud.
Hey, it shocked us on the show, guys. He's not told any of us this, the experience he had. So it all was exposed.
I
for
mean,
us
I've
too,
never
so.
told anybody about my light exercise. Have you guys ever heard that before?
No, I was going to talk to you later. Don't worry.
Yeah. It was terrifying. That's the question I've been wanting to ask Jerry ever since it happened, and it's been like, when I went to go do it, I was just like, do I actually say this out loud in front of all these people? I wanted to do it one-on-one with just Jerry, but yeah, I was like,
Well,
no,
that
I need to
should
do this.
tell you.
I got two super brave people here talking about their things. I can do this.
There
So
you
thank
go. That should tell you guys what
Good
you've
for
done
you.
here for all of us,
Yep,
and
all
given
of
us
us.
the ability to talk about these things in our own lives. I mean, I've never spoken about urine speaking to me before, so it definitely is. Yeah, you guys are definitely a force to be reckoned with. These guys these things don't stand a chance with this kind of warriors lined up.
They call this stuff high weirdness, but what it is, you're actually more aware of reality than the average person. That's what you have.
Yes,
that's
sir.
what you have to understand.
And you're more open to new concepts, by the way. I mean, I've gotten to the point of where I was listening to Flat Earth Dave the other day.
We
You
know
know,
that guy.
He's actually was in chat a
He's in
few
the
moments
chat,
ago.
yeah.
He was in chat just a minute ago.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Good
was he?
friend-
Oh,
good friend of the
sorry,
show.
sorry, I missed him. Anyway, he really made me stop and think, and so I thought, okay, well, if I'm stuck on one thought, I have to be open enough to at least examine this next thought. So I probably am going to do that over time, but I'm not going to die. It's not top priority, because to me, the shape makes no difference at all. It's, that all of this wonderfulness has been created. So, I mean,
Well,
I
if
see
you
it
have
every day in nature, and I'm happy with that. So,
If you have any questions, we have been doing this for like 7 years, studying this.
yeah.
Yep.
That's how we all met.
That's
Was
how we started
that topic right
experiments
there.
and well, observations, not
Well,
experiments.
I'm not closed-minded. I'll consider anything that I hear that rings like, oh, that's interesting, or
Yeah, Dave is a good
Well,
one to
Dave
watch.
is the
Dave
greatest
is who
starting
I
point you
share
could have
with
chosen,
everybody.
lady. Absolutely. He is a force to be reckoned. Another warrior that we are proud to be associated with in any way. He is something else. And
Yeah.
the work he's doing is definitely changing people's lives as well.
I was thinking about this when I was smoking a cigarette earlier today. That right now there are kids leaving the second grade, enjoying their summer off and fucking living life without a care in the world, getting ready to roll into third grade, that weren't even alive when we started doing Have No Sphere. Those little people didn't even exist.
That's insane.
Isn't that insane?
Well, I even took a chance and sent an email out to my entire group. I have like about, I don't know, 350 people in my email list. And so I went ahead and sent this out, saying, when you have some time, just check this out and, let me know what you think. And anyway, nobody's answered. So,
Well, let us know if you guys have any questions. Absolutely. In fact, in chat, there was some discussion, and I said, well, we'll have to get the guys back on some other time and open up that can of worms, because that would be another 4-hour show. And you guys have given way a lot of your time and effort and energy tonight. So, but being that open-minded, Sherry, is, definitely great to hear in this
I
day
know,
and age.
Jerry. It sounds crazy, man. I know.
Yeah.
well, compared to how I used to
Same
be,
thought we all had when we heard of it the first time. I
but
understand.
compared to how I used to be and growing up, the way that I was conditioned to think. I didn't even fit. When I first met some hippies in San Francisco in the 60s, I'm like, oh my God, these guys are nuts. And then the first time my sister told me about her spiritual journey, and I was thinking, oh my God, my sister's going crazy. She thinks spirits are real. Oh my God, I mean, I was that far gone. I did not think spirit was anything. It's like my dad was an avid atheist, so yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I
it's
had
hard to imagine.
I had it staring me in the face for years before I finally admitted it. It's like,
Yeah, it's it's something that you can't ignore anymore. Eventually,
I ignored it as long as I could.
yeah.
Then my denial system completely collapsed. It was like just shattered.
And I knew him before his belief system shattered. And I mean, he knew he was getting so close to. He knew that the voices were real. He just didn't know what they were, and we just kept chatting back and forth, and then that experience. Well, maybe he knew it, but he forgot it because he didn't want to say anything to me about it until much later after we met.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what they were, until these patterns started appearing, and after I met Van Dusen, who said, he was into Emanuel Swedenborg, and Swedenborg was talking of he would take off, and what'd you say? He's 300 years ago he was alive.
300 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. So he was a Christian mystic, and he would travel to these other worlds, and he'd come back and he'd write about the people and the entities that he met. And Van Dusen was reading about this, and he realized that the evil spirits that Swedenborg was talking about matched exactly the negative voices, the voices that his patients were hearing. And when I saw that, I read Swedenborg, and I went, yeah, there's an exact match. They behave exactly the same as these evil spirits that Emanuel Swedenborg had met and had interviewed in his spiritual journeys. And I contacted Van Dusen, and we were working on a book together before he got run over by a fast-moving cancer that wiped him out. But yeah, he was the first clinical psychologist I knew that knew what these things were.
Mm-hmm.
And he was experimenting too to try to find out what they were and how they operated. But he was trying to make friends with them. I always knew they were no good, and they were always enemies. And I was always trying to figure out a way to destroy them or get rid of them.
I'm trying to understand them. I admit I'm not so sure they're necessarily evil. Maybe it's our reaction to them that turns them being evil. I'm still out on that one. I think we still have to keep an open mind. To be able
They're parasites. That's all you need to understand.
It's like a shark. Everybody hated sharks for years. There's all these terrible predators, and you start to learn more about them. And you realize that some actually pet. You can interact with them. They're still vicious predators, but you understand that they have a consciousness. They feel pain, suffering. There's something more to them than just outright predators. And I'm wondering if there's something with these parasites, if there's something more to them, to understand something more about them.
I read a shaman's article one time, long time ago, that talked about the way that he looked at it was like they were mosquitoes, and they didn't attack us because we were bad or that they were bad. They attacked us because we smelled good. So that's a possibility, but they sure do harm a lot, and they have to do it by trickery. That's the thing. So, maybe the mosquito analogy is not quite right.
But I think it's pretty close, Sherry. We talked about that just recently on the show that, what the hell are mosquitoes even for in this world? And then we got into the life cycle and what they feed and et cetera. But the idea that the energy need they have, and how they've got this whole area here where we're all in this whole regime of people who seem to want to just keep adding suffering on top of suffering on top of suffering. It just seems like that's what they are. It's just, that's like Jerry said, just entities that want to feed on us. I also agree on Anonymous's side that there are definitely different levels to this and different entities that may not all have the same agenda, not all have the same ideas about what's going on. And I'm probably going to start ranting on a whole different topic, and we need to get you guys out of here. So why don't I shut it up and thank you all yet again for the amazing, amazing show tonight. And please, you are here. You've been here before. You guys know you're welcome back. Sherry, you now have the keys to the Iron Realm. That lock never closes. That link always works. You are welcome anytime. Lovely
Yeah,
lady.
if you have
Thank you so much.
anything new to share at any time or anything like that you want to come on and share, please reach out. If it were up to me, I'd have you on every month.
I was going to say, even more than that, I would love to just have you back
Weekly.
on to talk your Reiki, some of the stuff you've done in
Right,
your
off
past.
the show even. I was
So many
thinking, damn, I want
things.
to talk to you guys about stuff away from the show, about so many things y'all brought up.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm right there with
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to leave with is so that everybody knows that these things attack all of us.
Yeah.
You don't have to turn out to be a schizophrenic to be attacked. So that's what we're watching in our world today, I think.
Yeah,
is-
good point.
Mm-hmm. Great
Yeah,
reminder.
every negative thought about yourself or others comes from them. Sherry pointed that out.
Yeah,
so
that's-
they hit us all.
I don't know. Some people in traffic around here, I'm pretty sure that's not where my negative thoughts come from. I'm sure that these people around here are creating my negative thoughts for me. But I know,
You never
Anon, you
know.
got to let your dog out and got to get that stuff taken care of. And take him for a
Well, those
walk.
entities, they feed on suffering. The bad ones do. I think the better ones are actually trying to help humanity. You got some entities out there that do not like humanity at all, and other ones that are trying to work in our favor, but it's trying to sort through which are which. And yeah, you always take a religious approach, a psychological approach on this, but the idea is to heal your mind, to bring your broken fragments back together to become whole again as a human being. It's been a great discussion. Truly enjoyed this.
Yeah, the good ones speak in feeling and intuition. That's usually how they come across. Very seldom do they speak out loud, like the negative voices do.
They also speak in dreams.
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, I've only heard the good one a couple times, and when it was an important time, I think, and it was warning me. It was giving me a warning to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that happens. Like the negative ones, I just laugh at them. And haha, good try. Driving down the road. Oh, smash into that car. No, I know what you are. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's what you got them right on the head on that one.
Zach, was that the Masonic initiation that you're starting to go through? Is that?
Yeah, it was.
I remember. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, Masonry for Children. It was
pulling
weird.
out the calendar. When are you guys free again? No, I'm just kidding. But we do. It's been a great conversation. I hate for it to end. I really want to continue so much of it, and I've written down so many things I never got back to with you, and that's what happened last time. You were here. Hell, that's what happened when you were here 2 years ago, Jared. So yeah, man.
Yeah, we'll do it again. We'll
soon.
do it again.
Absolutely.
And it's so important in another way too that it breaks open again the pseudoscience and the psychobabble that we're all taught. That we are very much programmed to. If I'm getting on a show with a couple of schizo crazy people, I'm Anon. Sherry, you guys are absolutely terrific. You're coherent. You're not living up to the expectations, but we've been taught to expect by today's medical papers and again, which has put down the ropes as far as discrediting and dehumanizing people and writing it up like, again, a little chemical imbalance or whatever, throwing it out there, taking away the humanity behind it, the people behind it. And again, the reality of it, which I will have to, even though again I like to see on how things work. To me, what you're saying about the trauma based and how everybody is being hit in the parasitic way of feeding. I see this again as spiritual battle. That how can you take on a battle when they're lying about who the enemy is? And so what you guys are opening up to a lot of people. Because this group here, even small, we talk, we network out. Again, it's just a way of looking at things that's really important that we stop and look at. And so thank you so much. You guys are completely delightful. It's so nice to talk to you, and I don't think we'd get tired of it ever.
Well, thanks for having us and helping us get the message out.
Well, it's such an important
yes,
one.
thank you very much for that. And by the way, it's all about labels, so
Right.
yeah.
And they're not real, are they? Yeah.
Nope.
We're used to the flat earther labels. Sherry, if you ever want to in the background kind of learn without trying, we have out of this house another channel called Glowbusters 24/7 that runs like the best of best different flat earth videos that, again, if you leave it running in the background while you're doing dishes and other things, just gives some different facts and that. So it's a fun, non-aggressive way to like take in a lot of the different facts, because it's usually, it's very much like when we're looking at you, like coming on and expecting to have a preconception of what a crazy person is or what schizophrenia is or what it looks like. It's, again, when you stop and really look at it, things are never quite as they teach us.
Yeah, the science in this realm is the same as the science in the medical realm. It's totally ass backwards, and it's
not real science.
It's evil.
Not
yeah,
real
it's
science.
not real.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
not real science at all. And
No.
long ago, I realized that if I'm crazy in an insane, if I'm sane in an insane world, then I'm going to be looked at as crazy. And all of you were like that. I mean, all of you would be looked at as crazy by the sleepers, because they don't know.
Absolutely.
So I take that as a compliment.
Yeah. Well, this is my favorite quote from Plato, and I think it sums it up so beautifully about the people that can actually see. It goes, those able to see beyond the shadows and lies of their culture will never be understood, let alone believed by the masses.
Absolutely.
That hits it on the head.
Plato's cave.
Yep.
And we do
Well,
love
thank you
Kimmy
again,
so
guys.
much because Kimmy's super smart for a woman.
Give him the dig back.
And there's that Josh humor. I love it.
Not at all what you'd expect. Anyway.
Okay.
Even
guys.
though I left the Chinobis link open, I somehow have lost my link to your damn site. Anon, can you give it to us again? And I had it, I thought, in the show description, and I didn't put it. I am
Sure.
so sorry.
Should I put it in
Yeah.
the chat or just say it out
You
loud?
can say it, drop it in the chat, would probably help everybody a lot better.
Okay, well,
So, yeah, man, I cannot believe, and I'm
It's-
dug through my history, and I still am not digging it up.
It's asteroxrising.com. It's all one word, asteroxrising.com. I'll put it in the chat as well. If you want to post it anywhere, that'd be great.
Was that not in the show description from last show? Well, I thought for sure.
I
put
didn't
in
stick
there.
it. If you did, thank you, Josh. Again, I'm
From the last
multitasking
show? I
from
thought I might have.
every freaking description. I mean, everything, dude. I've been multitasking behind the scenes, wrenching people up, the whole 9 yards. So I probably missed it.
They said, well,
I
know
just wanted to
didn't-
make sure I got out there. And then, Sherry, do you actually have a separate site
Yes, I do.
yourself too? Thank you.
Yeah, it's keyholejourney.com.
I think I did find it earlier and share it with everybody. I did. It was when you first started talking about That's a Lie. I'll drop it back in the chat too. Hold up. I've got a lot going.
My site's more about a religious experience. It's kind of a way for somebody to, it's a book which gets into how to kind of find your own soul, to discover yourself. And it kind of goes into some of the falsities behind certain religions and basically trying to embrace all of them. But it makes you think. It's more of a spiritual journey for anybody who's willing to read the book. It's kind of beefy. It's gonna mentally strain you, but it'll hopefully increase your consciousness and awareness once you complete it.
That's awesome.
There we go. I just linked it in the chat as well for everybody. And I put your Keyhole Journey link as well. I think it's going straight to the That's a Lie area so they can dig around and enjoy
Okay,
there.
thank you very much.
Absolutely, guys. Thank y'all.
And Sherry and we put out one here too. I don't know if you can see it.
Absolutely. What
Yes,
a great
sir.
title,
I have
too.
a copy. There was a link in chat for James True a little bit earlier for the book as well.
This is how we kind of came upon all this stuff here. Took us 2 years to write that little book.
I bet.
I told Jerry I'm not going to read his book yet because that would bias me. So I haven't read his book, but everything he's talking about, yep, been there,
Hitting it
know
on the
that,
head,
yep,
right?
that's it,
There you
that's it,
go.
that's it. So that way, by not reading his book, people realize this is authentic because a lot of the schizophrenics or the label of schizophrenia have gone through a lot of these experiences and those repeat patterns that appears in Jerry and Sherry's book. It's very legitimate. And as they say, hallucinations would be random, and they aren't. There's definitive patterns going on, and they're repeating throughout history.
Anon, I would appreciate it if when you do read the book, that you put your review there on the Amazon page.
I absolutely will. Absolutely will.
Okay.
Well, folks, please go check out all their sites. Share it with people. I mean, this is the kind of information that isn't going to be shared through any type of mainstream anything. This is grassroots stuff, and people need to hear about this. The first part of fixing any problem is, admitting there's a problem, but then it's also knowing what the actual problem is. And this isn't something they're going to be told if they go to a psychiatrist or something like that. They're not going to hear this. They're going to be told, you're insane, you need to take this medication, and they're going to go through the rigmarole through the outdoor over and over and over again. So this really needs to be heard by more people.
And we got a lot more information on our website at jerrymarzinsky.com. I mean, there's videos, there's articles, there's testimonials. There's a ton of information there that we haven't covered here.
This is the walking the walk type of stuff that's out there that just it's not just chatting, it's giving solutions and ways to work forward. And it's stepping forward in truth and exposing one step at a time that makes such a difference. And we know we can network, reach out, and get the truth out there. Yet another lie that needs to be exposed, or again, things to piece together, the puzzle to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to, Jerry's website focuses on his work. And excuse me, my website has a whole page of topics to choose from. So I do try to keep it up to date. And so I have a little, if a person wants to know what's been updated, they can use the contact form on the page and just, tell me that they want to be on my list for updates, and I'll make sure that they do that, because this website has been in the works for a very long time. And so, it could be organized better, but I don't have the time to do that.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, already Hori Sheet, much love, brother, is saying in chat that if you did miss the beginning like he did, he wants to go back and watch it, but instead of just doing that, he's going to restream it. So
that's epic, Hori. Thank you so much, friend.
Hell yeah.
Love you, man.
So if you missed the beginning and you planned on going back and watching it, keep an eye out for the Hori Sheet Show channel. He's going to be restreaming it here. So I don't know exactly when. I don't want to put him on any spot, but yeah, if you want a group, because it's nice to have people to talk to while you're absorbing all this information.
Okay,
so thank you so much, Hori.
Tammy, I wonder if you could put the link to the site you were telling me about in the chat or someplace, or send it to me or something.
Now, I dropped it into the YouTube chat. Do you want me to put it into the show
drop
chat?
it in here too. I was going to grab it, but I'm trying to get everybody's.
Sure. Yeah, let me go ahead and grab it. No problem at all. I would love to. And putting notes on that. That is my husband's channel, and we also do live shows on Wednesdays or Thursdays, and always Sundays. But the show happens either Wednesday or Thursdays, sometimes on other days, depending on the week.
Okay.
Okay,
And
I guess we better
did-
get off of here. It's 7-Eleven over here, and we're over 3 hours. I don't know who's going to listen to 3 hours.
I
of
know,
this stuff.
it's us too. We do it. We can't stop. It's too good, and we never want to quit, and we have to. Because as you said, looking at a 3-hour video for someone else may not be as fun as it is for us. So, guys, I've linked everything, I hope, in chat. I mean, in the show description again. If I missed something, we'll go back and fix it later. Thank you so much for the restream there, Hort. We can't wait, brother. Jerry, Anonymous, Sherry, thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you for having this platform for us to tell our
Thank you
stories.
very much.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and the door is always open. If you guys have anything, even stuff doesn't have to be new. Anything old you forgot that hey, we wanted to bring this up. Come on back anytime.
And you
please.
have my phone number. True, Jerry. I mean, truly. Text me, call me. I'm right there, friend.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll synchronize watches.
And Sherry, like coming on and learning different new things, and that it's so good to have another girl on the show with me. I can't tell you how wonderful it is, and just to join in on it just feels better. It feels better. So anytime you want to join in or have any questions, please welcome always.
It's a little more balanced, isn't it?
It is, and I did drop that into the show chat for you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've already clicked it and it's sitting in another tab.
Yeah, it's
Enjoy
always been a
that
bit of a
rabbit hole.
sausage fest around here.
Well, yeah, okay. I'll keep an open mind, and my logic is still with me, and I don't intend to get rid of it. But actually, I think that'll be a benefit.
I think you'd be
I think
surprised.
it will.
We'll just come full circle. We'll do a call back to the pre-show. It's like how I thought about bunnies 2 months ago versus how I think about bunnies now. It's a whole different paradigm, right? I can't look at bunnies the same now because they're not the same. My brain isn't wired that way anymore.
Well, that's like Cammie said. She's had a preconception of what it'd be like to have two crazy people.
Exactly. It's exactly right.
And we didn't meet her expectations, so that's a good thing,
But no, you're exactly
You've
right.
had a rabbit epiphany.
A rabbit
There you
epiphany.
go, rabbit
Exactly.
epiphany.
But it was a flat earth epiphany too. It happened almost in the exact same way. It was like, well, this is stupid. None of this makes, why would, none of my, oh shit. Oh, and then it makes sense. You're like, it's not about the square. It's not like a disc in space. I get it. Everything I thought that they taught me about the ball was a lie. And what they taught me about flat earth was a lie too. It's like I never should have believed them in the first place about anything they said. And that's
Well,
been
when
the jumping.
I first heard the term flat earth, I thought, these guys are off their rocker. And then I saw a joke and it just made me laugh so hard. And it said, let's see if I can remember it. It's like, if the earth were flat, cats would have pawed everything off the edge a long time ago or something.
Yes,
like that.
indeed.
Yeah, it was so funny. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. But in the meantime, I've learned that I've been lied to about absolutely everything.
Indeed.
Except for maybe some mathematics, simple arithmetic type thing.
I don't know. You talked to Terry about that.
Well, 2 plus 2 is probably still 4.
It is, but if I have 2 unicorns and I take 4 of your unicorns, I will have 6 unicorns, right? Then the math completely works out. So because the math works out, can we just believe in unicorns?
Well, and it goes the same with reading. It goes with same with language. My gosh, holy cow. We're using words all the time that we think are correct, and we're finding out the real meaning of it. It's like, we're blaspheming ourselves every day. And I mean, this is just nuts. So I'm kind of dabbling into.
We need to get you back in here, Sherry. We need to get you back in here.
I'm dabbling into a lot of stuff that I had heard about, and was really, really busy on my job and stuff like that, and I just put it aside, and then I had this moment of not having to work anymore. So hey, it was time for me to start studying up on some of these things, and I waited until whatever popped into my view, if it was one of those things, I'd go check it out.
Well, I just want to say that the crazy lady sounds like one of the smartest people I've ever met. Actually,
Yes,
your wisdom is golden and off of the charts as far as looking around, observing, and even I hear the way that you say that you go out in nature and see creation and feel the spirituality. I just want to say my respect to you is off of the chart, and thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you
tonight.
All
Okay, we said goodbye 3 or 4 times.
3 or 4
already.
times.
All right.
Oh, yeah,
Welcome to the
bye.
Midwest.
No, that's it. We're done.
It's like a
Good evening,
family
all.
reunion.
It's worse than a family.
It's a Missouri goodbye. That's right. We'll say it 3 or 4
Okay.
times, and not until I slap my thighs and say, "Welp," and start to get up, and then we'll know it's finally
Then we'll
done.
know it's done.
Love y'all.
Okay.
Love y'all.
Well, we'll
Thank y'all.
see you guys next time.
Sounds
Bye.
like a plan.
All right.
Love you
Bye-bye.
guys. Thanks so much, Jerry, Sherry, Anon, Walt, Cammy, Zach, and of course everybody there in chat. What a great time! What a great show! What a blast! I love these Friday nights. I really do. Thank you guys. We will see you right back here again next week, hopefully, for another episode of Have No Sphere, Iron Row Media on YouTube. Be good. Be well. Bye-bye.
Peace out, everyone.
All right. Okay. Take care, guys. Nice to be with you again.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right.